I told you Shane does not like talking landing spots,
Yes.
right? So he's putting the show sheet together. He's like, I got this idea. I was like, Shane's not going to like it. He's probably not going to show up for the episode. He's like, I'll ask him. I'll check with him. And then so he checked with him, and Shane's like, oh, I love it. I love that. Yeah, let's do it. And then he calls out of the episode like an hour ahead of time. And I'm just like, I told you. He was just trying to make me feel good.
I knew it as soon as he put that message in the chat. I was like, damn it, Chase. Chase jinxed it.
I didn't jinx it. I just knew what was going to happen. I'm trying to do shows with him centered around the landing spot. And the difference is with me, he just calls me a jackass, says he doesn't want to do that shit. With you, you're still new, taking over the show sheet. So
right.
Yeah,
I will show you the text. I should screenshot the text and put it like on the screen where he says, I love it. Like it was literally like, I don't like, it wasn't one of those, I don't know about that idea, or I really don't care to do that. I love it. All caps.
Yep. Never believe Shane.
Jackass.
All right. You ready to kick the show off? You ready to rock and roll? Because I want to talk draft. I'm ready.
I know you are. I know you are. Let's do it.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Shane Manila, Jacob Sanderson, and Chase Vernon.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back in. This is Fantasy Intervention. I am your host, Jay. You can find me at FantasyJ77 over there on Twitter. I am back after my 2-week hiatus of absolutely just screwing off, doing nothing, letting Chase take the reins for a couple weeks. And he did not do a bad job. Really impressed. So thank you, Chase, for not screwing up the show.
It was my show, by the way. I don't know if you remember this or not, but it's been my show for a couple of years. So
Well, yeah, but we did cancel culture with you, I think, or at least cancel seat with you. Moved you over a seat or something. But dude, Chase, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm ready to talk. We do this. I've been doing this show for like 3 or 4 years now, and this is always my favorite episode of the year. Is just breaking down what could happen with some of these prospects. Trying to get an idea of what could happen. I know it's all speculation, but it's still fun. Like it's still fun to talk about what could happen versus what has already happened. So that's what I'm excited to dive into.
Yeah, we are exactly 24 hours away from kicking off this year's NFL draft. So what better time than now to bring on one of the best in the college fantasy world from campus to Canton, Matthew Bruening. You can follow him over at Sports Fanatic MB on Twitter. Matthew, thanks for jumping in tonight. Brother, what are your plans for tomorrow night in the first round of the NFL draft?
Well, first off, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to jump on and talk with both of you guys here about the NFL draft. Unfortunately, I'll be producing content. Something, we probably know, I'm sure you guys will be involved in that some sort of way tomorrow night, which is definitely fun. But coming from someone who's been a fan of the NFL draft and college football for a long time, I miss the days of getting to kind of just like go to a bar, go to a friend's house with a bunch of friends and just sit and watch the craziness happen at the NFL draft. But I'll be on YouTube live somewhere producing content, watching the draft and talking about it.
Absolutely. Well, I may have to tap into that for a few minutes while I'm doing my own thing. So, Chase, quick question for you. What is the Vernon first round tradition? You're muted again. Rookie.
I was coughing, bro. I forgot. No, actually, no. I was opening a beer. That's what it was. No. So I for the past few years, I've been on shows every year, and this year is like the first year because I didn't do a ton of content this past year. I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus as I advanced through the mazes of Trophy Smack, figuring out different areas that I could excel in. So I didn't have as much content coming out, but that's been different over the past 2 weeks as we've slowly started, getting back into it. So I'm only in one show this year, so maybe I'll go out after that show and grab a drink at a bar or something. But I like sitting at home and I like analyzing. I like listening to the speculation come from the announcers. I like, knowing what's happening. And although it's fun to sit there and watch with a beer in your hands at a bar, you don't get that I guess attention, that you get when you're creating content.
Right.
Like Matt was bringing up, you don't
Yes,
understand
absolutely.
exactly what's going on when, what's happening.
Well, before we dive into tonight's show, if you haven't already, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, tap the notification button. That way you get alerted when we go live, drop new content, anything like that. We are inching our way to 1,000 subscribers, and that Fantasy Intervention Listener League is right around the corner, where the winner gets a ring from our sponsor, Trophy Smack. Plus, Howard Bender is going to jump in the league, and he's going to give away a free year subscription to Fantasy Alarm as well. And all you got to do is subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can join us over there on Twitter at @joinourcircle_. Please do that. Please do that. And like you guys have already started doing, do not hesitate. Put your questions into the chat. We will get those up on the screen as quick as possible. The one thing I do want you guys to do tonight in the chat is please let us know where Chase is wrong tonight. Now, let's get into the show. I want to talk about some perfect landing spots for some of these incoming rookies. But of course, in order to find those landing spots, we probably need to look at some of what the front office and the coaching staff, what their trends are over the last few drafts, or however many drafts they've been in the league, and that way we can know what to expect over the next 3 days or so. So Matthew, let's start with you, and let's start with Green Bay. They have the 13th pick now after trading Aaron Rodgers away to the Jets. The Packers have not taken a wide receiver or tight end in over 20 years, going back to 2002, where they took Bubba Franks from Miami and Javon Walker out of Florida State. It looks like it's going to be Jordan Love under center. Is this the year that they used the pick that they traded, or that they got for trading Aaron Rodgers away to get that pass catcher?
I mean, the trends would tell you no, right? That's it. That's the way I would lean to for the most part. It's going to be interesting with them because I do think wide receiver and tight end are two of their biggest needs outside of edge. And there's really two edge players that I could see possibly one of the two falling, which is Myles Murphy or Tyree Wilson. If neither one of those guys fall, I don't know that Green Bay trades back. I would hope that they do draft someone to help out Jordan Love because not only Aaron Rodgers leaves, but you had Allen Lazard, who was their top wide receiver last year. He's gone as well. He's in New York. Really, they only have on that wide receiver core Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Now, both those guys will play on the outside, and they'll be very good. If I had a choice of who I think the Packers should go with, it would be Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I think will work very well in the middle area of the field, in the short area, very good at creating separation. But I think the pick that they'll take is Michael Mayer at tight end because he's the all-around tight end. Now, I know a lot of people have Dalton Kincaid as a top tight end, but for me, I would go Michael Mayer. He's a great blocking tight end, but he's also a very good receiving weapon. To me, if you wanted to comp him to someone in the NFL already, he reminds me a lot of Austin Hooper. But Austin Hooper, when he gets that volume, can be an absolute stud, as we saw him do in it was Atlanta, I believe, because it was right before he went to Cleveland, and Cleveland never threw him the ball, and he kind of just disappeared. But I would love if they drafted a guy like Michael Mayer or Jackson Smith-Njigba. But I feel like the trend's going to tell you if one of those edge guys don't fall, they're going to trade out and go back a little bit, and then possibly maybe take a player later in the draft.
Chase?
Yeah, so, not only have we not seen the Green Bay Packers fade pass catchers, we've seen every organization that Matt LaFleur has been a part of fade pass catchers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we watched the Titans draft Corey Davis, and the year before, he was with that organization, and Corey Davis completely failed out as a, fifth overall pick in the first round. Then we saw Cooper Kupp, right? He was with the Rams, and they drafted Cooper Kupp in the third, and obviously Cooper Kupp saw significant success as a was it third or fourth round? I think it was third round pick. With the Green Bay Packers, we've seen year after year them obtain success from second, third round wide receivers. That's typically where they end up, going to, and they don't use the tight end enough. Like, their scheme doesn't call for it. It never has. Like, when you go back to LaFleur coaching with the Rams, although it was McVay calling the plays, they never used it, right? And then when we see the Titans when he was there, they never use it. So he's never been one to use the tight end. So I just don't see them drafted tight end at any point in the first round, probably not even the second, to be honest with you. Now, what we have seen in the past is the Packers, and they've typically drafted late, right? I think this is probably the earliest they've drafted in as long as I can remember. They see a guy that they like, and they target him, and they actually go after him. They typically trade up to get that guy. So somebody that I really like as a prospect and something that probably has very low odds of happening is if Jalen Carter starts to slip. Now, there are like 5 or 6 teams from like picks 5 through picks 10, or picks 5 through picks 11, maybe 12, that actually need a defensive lineman. So for me, the team that is most likely to trade out of that position outside of the Lions, because I don't know if the Lions will work a first-round pick with the Packers without the Packers overpaying, which, I mean, they did a trade with the Vikings, so last year, the year before that, to move up. But if the Raiders want to trade back and the Green Bay Packers end up moving up to select Jalen Carter, I think that's a very strong move. I think it's an organizational fit. I think that it's a talent that has obviously slipped from the 2nd or 3rd overall pick now down to the 8th overall pick. So I think that makes it very interesting for the Green Bay Packers to go after that. Now, if they don't, if they end up getting it to that point and it's their pick and they're sitting on the clock with the 13th overall pick, I don't think they're going to take JSN. I don't think that they're going to take, Quentin Johnson or Maher, any one of those guys, right? I think that there's a team that could trade up that makes things very interesting. We have the Baltimore Ravens, who are sitting there at 22. And we've already heard the rumblings from Lamar Jackson. He wants another wide receiver, right? He wants Hopkins. He wants something. Now, if they are feeling the heat and they're like, man, Jackson Smith and Jigba, we have Odell Beckham on one side, we have Rashad Bateman on the other, we have Mark Andrews, and we can have JSN play the slot, maybe mixing some outside. He could fill in if one of these players are injured. But now there's an attachment to stay to the organization long term. And they go out and they're able to trade up and grab JSN. I think that it works for their scheme. I think that it works for the situation. And now the Green Bay Packers could ask for 2 first-round picks. They're going to get a pick in 2024 from the Ravens, and they'll get the 22nd overall pick. In exchange, they'll send off like what did I end up doing earlier? It was like the 116 and 149. And then, of course, they're 113 for 2 first-round picks over the next 2 years. The Packers have 3 picks between 42 and 78 that they could actually move one of those picks out of in order to acquire depth in the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds, of course. And now they're sitting there with potentially 3 first-round picks in 2024, just in case Jordan Love completely blows and sucks ass, right? Like, that's an excellent position to be in for them for 2024. It makes sense for both teams, and that's what I would love to see. If not, and let me also bring up, in the 2020 or in the 22nd range, you're going to have guys like potentially Kalijah Cansey fall to them, Brian Branch. And I don't see them, like I said, selecting a pass catcher, but we will have Michael Mayer and Jordan Addison both potentially available there as well. So there's just a lot more need in that area that they could be drafted at 22nd overall and that they could fill those needs with. Meanwhile, they're getting a 2024 first along with it. Even Mazi Smith, if you want to reach, that's another guy I could see him taking.
Matt, so tell me why Chase is just blowing smoke right here. What is Chase wrong about when he's bringing up this trade? Because the one thing I would think, like, the Ravens could possibly jump up and make that trade, but I think that would be if like Anthony Richardson's there, if Anthony Richardson slides, because that's been linked as well for the Baltimore Ravens, only because as of right now, of course, there's no Lamar Jackson signed.
Yeah, I actually think Green Bay would be a team that trades out. Like I said, if they do not want to go one of those, I actually don't. The only thing I disagree with Chase on is I think the Matt LaFleur not using tight ends is a little overstated because of the Sean McVay thing. If you go back to his time in Atlanta, I believe Jacob Tammy was one of their better receiving options. Actually, at the time, it was just him and Julio Jones. He had a high reception season 2 years in there. And then the year he was in Tennessee, Jonnu Smith had one of his better years. And we saw, and I always forget what his name is, the tight end that the Packers had for 2 years, he ended up blowing out his knee and coming back, and he was okay at the back end of the season. I can't remember. He's got I don't want to say a weird last name, but I don't remember. Everybody fell in love with him. He like had a blow up second half of the season. Ended up tearing, I believe it was his ACL toward the end of the year. I was trying to look it up, and I can't for the life of me remember what his name is, and it's driving me crazy now. But while I do agree that Sean McVay does not use the tight end enough, Matt LaFleur has, for the most part, historically shown that he has. So that's why I do think Michael Mayer would be a good fit.
Are we talking about Robert Tonyan?
Yes, there we go. He says it Tunyon or something like that, right? He doesn't actually say Tunyon. Yeah, that's why I couldn't remember what his name was.
During that season, they ended up like getting half their receivers hurt or something on those lines. And then with Jacob Tamm, you brought it up, like they had no other options. Like they had to go to him. So, I mean, at least the Packers, they have two guys who we think are okay. And they'll probably draft a guy in the second or third round this year. You know, they're just going to wait to get who they find or who they believe is a value at that point. It's just a philosophical or organizational philosophy.
Yeah, but they could make the trade. I would not be surprised. They are one of the teams, I think, in the top 15 that has a better chance of trading because they do that quite often. They tend to trade back. They do not tend to trade up. So I would not be surprised if they trade back and then try and grab somebody later.
Jamie posted this question real quick. Over under on 3.5 wide receivers drafted in the first round.
I take the under.
Yeah, I'm taking under too. I think it's going to be Zay Flowers, JSN, and either Addison or Quentin Johnson. It just depends on a team's preference. I don't see them both going though. I actually don't see Addison. Like I think Addison has the most likely second round value for most teams. From what I've heard.
Don't elaborate too much on that, Chase. That's a question for later. Simmer down over there. I know you're super excited about this show, so let's move over to. I'm not going to call them your Commanders, but let's move over to the Washington Commanders. They own this 16th overall pick. I have looked everywhere I can find. The answer is never. They've never drafted a tight end in the first round. I know we just got done talking about tight ends. Looks like it's going to be Sam Howell to lead the offense at least for now. They do have Jacoby Brissett. Listen here, Jamie. If you get in that chat and you start talking Jacoby Brissett, I'm going to kick you off. That's clear. I'm not doing this tonight with you, Jamie. What tight end? You know, is Washington and Riverboat Ron a no-brainer landing spot for a tight end in round one this year?
No, absolutely not. It's actually the opposite. There's no way that they're going to actually draft a tight end. Washington, let's see. First off, you know, you brought up like with Sam Howell being essentially a second-year tight end, you know, they're the best friends of tight ends, and that's not true. It's actually the opposite. Rookie quarterbacks traditionally. There was an article that came out in 2017, and I remember this from PFF, and I couldn't remember who it was, so I had to look it up. And in the process, I found another one too. So Tyler Lochner, I don't know if that's how you say his name. Excuse me if I'm missaying. It's Loechner. He pulled out some stats from 2017. I'll never forget this article because I was always one of those people that believed this myth. And when this came out, I was like mind blown. I was like, wait, like they don't pass the tight ends more? He proved the opposite, in fact. Like they actually rarely pass their tight end. It's significantly below their historical averages. And then I ended up coming across a friend of the show with Stephen Pintado, who just read an article this year that came out about how tight ends are not the best friend of a rookie quarterback or a younger quarterback as a whole. So I don't think there's too much data on a second-year quarterback, but just traditionally, that's not the case. Now, regardless, it doesn't matter because Riverboat Ron doesn't draft tight ends. He has a very strong habit of drafting tight ends late. He did trade for Greg Olsen at one point. I think it was like a third-round pick or something along those lines, so that's still not an early pick. The only time that anybody in the organization, which, by the way, Riverboat Ron Rivera has dominant say over player personnel, right? He's the last one. He's the one that brought in the management team. So he's like, okay, nope, we're not doing that at the last, second, whatever it is. So the only guy inside of his organization that has drafted a tight end early when it was his say was Martin Mayhew with Eric Ebron. And we all know how that wound up and how that ended up working with the organization where they didn't want anything to do with him by the end of his contract with the Lions. So there's no way that they actually go tight end here. They don't value tight ends. Tight ends aren't on the top of their value charts in terms of positional values. Very similar to safeties. Like they've gotten their starting safeties, which are two of the top 15 safeties in the league late. They're very good at finding that talent late. Meanwhile, in the past like few years, they've drafted tight ends in like the 4th and 5th rounds when it comes to Bates and whoever that other guy was. But as per like the perfect
Logan Thomas.
Yeah, well, no, they didn't draft Logan Thomas. He came over from
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
he was
he
a
got
free
drafted
agent signing, right?
by the Bills or Arizona, and then went to Arizona, the Bills, something on those lines, and then ended up signing. He ended up converting halfway through with one of those teams. I can't remember which one it was.
Well, who do you feel is the perfect fit here in Washington at that 16?
Well, I feel like I'm disappointing people out there. I really do. I genuinely feel like I'm disappointing people because this is a fantasy football show, so they're waiting for me to say an offensive player, but that's not the case.
Okay.
Right. We're going to see one of two things happen. They're either going to get an offensive lineman if one of them falls. What is it? 4 of them, right, Matt? I think it's 4 big offensive linemen or 3.
Yeah. There's 4 good ones that should go in the first round.
Yeah. It's Broderick, Parrish, Johnson. Anyways, I'm not going to bore everybody with offensive line names. The guy, though, that I think ends up going to them if they don't get one of the top 4 offensive linemen is Joey Porter. They need a guy to push Kendall Fuller back to the inside because Kendall Fuller sucks on the outside. They already have Benjamin St-Juste on the other side, so they'll get their 2 outside guys with Joey Porter, be able to shut some players down, and Kendall Fuller gets to naturally get back to his best position, which is in the slot where he can get a good amount of turnovers, kind of eliminate that slot receiver, something that they haven't been able to do in the past couple of years because Kendall Fuller keeps on having to move back to the outside, whether it be William Jackson, Benjamin St-Juste being a rookie that year. So hopefully that's the route that they go for their defensive perspective, because if not, you play whatever team lines up in the slot up against them.
Right on. Matt, do you get anything to add about the Washington Commanders on this?
No, I think Chase nailed it. They're definitely going offensive tackle or cornerback. I mean, you've got I was trying to think of who. I know Dwan Jones is up there as well, the other former Buckeye, and I want to say it's the Darnell Wright from Tennessee, I think is valued very highly. So that's probably the 4th offensive tackle. But yeah, I mean, with them, I think if none of those guys fall, you go cornerback. And even if Joey Porter goes early, you got Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, who I think is a stud that can fit right in there on that defense too. Yeah, so I mean, you got him, Christian Gonzalez. I mean, there's a ton of really good cornerbacks and offensive tackles. You don't need a tight end at 16. Go for a more primary spot. Build up that offensive line. Build out that back end of the defense.
Once again, this gives an opportunity to the Ravens, which I don't think would pay as much for. I think it's the 16th overall pick to move up and grab their guy if they choose to. If JSN is still on the board, a lot of people would love for them to take JSN. I don't think that's the right move in terms of their offense. But I mean, like, if they end up trading back, Banks is like, I love him almost as much as I love Porter. You know, that dude's a phenomenal talent. So I would love to see Banks end up there and them also acquire another pick for next year, whether it be a 2nd round or 1st round, that kind of be up in the air.
All right, so let's move over to the Eagles. We've all seen the mocks. At least I put on here that we all think, well, it's me that thinks this is a very, very good spot for a running back. However, the Eagles, they own the 10th and the 30th pick in the 1st round. Since Howie Roseman's been there, the earliest the Eagles have taken a running back is 50th overall, and that was Miles Sanders. So Bijan's been linked there. You know, there's been Gibbs has been linked there at the 30th overall pick. Should with the information that I just gave out that Roseman's never taken one in the 1st round, should this lead us to believe that they're not likely going to take one until the 2nd round again? And what need do you see at that 10 and at that 30 for them to fill, Matt?
At 10, I would not. I think if you do it, you're taking Bijan. I would still try and go defensive line. I mean, Chase brought up earlier Jalen Carter. I think he's arguably the best defensive player in the draft, but obviously due to the off-field stuff, there's been some concerns that he might slide. If I'm Roseman, I'm taking Carter if he falls to 10 to help put in. You already drafted those 2 studs from Georgia last year, and then you put him in on that defense. You're already Super Bowl bound. Like, why? I love Bijan, and I think he's got a shot to be like Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor type special. But you don't need that to win a Super Bowl. We've just seen you don't really need that running back. You need a great defense and a quarterback. Well, you got your quarterback, and you had a really good defense last year that unfortunately just kind of struggled in the Super Bowl. That's where I would go. I'd go there. Mentioned Myles Murphy earlier for when we were talking about Green Bay. Him, you get an edge player, just someone on that defensive line. And then if you want to take a running back with that 2nd pick, I actually don't think it would be a bad move because we've seen the NFL devalue these running backs so much that if you're able to get, say, a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Zach Charbonnet at the end of the first round and you can pick up that fifth-year option on them, you're going to hold the rights to that player for the most part, their NFL career, and you don't have to pay him. You already know you're paying Jalen Hurts. I'm sure the Eagles have other guys coming up here in the next couple of years, so you're getting a really high-end running back cheap for the next 5 years. Like, that's personally what I would do, and I think that's what he's going to do. I also wouldn't be surprised if he trades out. I mean, he's been a genius when it comes to the trades that he's made over the past 3 or 4 years and when it comes to the draft and what he's been doing. So I think if Carter falls to 10, that's exactly where they'll go, and then maybe they trade out later. But if I were him, hit that defense with the best player you can right there at that first pick at 10. And then if you really want a running back on the second pick, take a running back there.
Dude, you're just recreating the Georgia, the back-to-back national championship team, defensively anyway, up into Philly. I don't know. I don't like it as a Florida fan. I do not like it at all. Chase, what do you got?
Well, I do want to add in that Howie Roseman is never, outside of, like we talked about Sanders, he's never taken a running back before the 5th round. So Miles Sanders is the only running back that he took before the 5th round, which was 50th overall. That leads us to believe that their 62nd pick which is their second round pick is, or I think, yeah, that's going to be right around the earliest that they would end up taking a running back, right? So off the bat.
At this point, a running back at 30 is like a luxury pick, right?
Yeah, well, it's always a luxury pick. Like when you have running backs, like if you're taking a running back first round, it always should be a luxury pick, unless your name is Urban Meyer, or
Urban what?
Or you just have very bad judgment, like the Pittsburgh Steelers front office does, instead of drafting an offensive lineman when they took Najee Harris. At this point, that's where running backs lie. So, I mean, we talked about the Chiefs taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round, and everybody loved it, and then we saw what actually happened with that. So typically, when you take a running back in the first round, that's just a judge of how bad of a GM you actually are. In the past 5 or 6 years, every single running back that we've seen taken in the first round was typically by a terrible GM, and most of the time was replaced within a couple of years outside of the Steelers front office and the Chiefs front office. So that with that being said, we're going to have guys, and you brought it up, Zach Charbonnet, Tajay Spears, Izzy, Zach Evans, which are all being like the range of right around like pick 62. So I could see them taking a guy there. Like if they want to go get their guy, they can. But I like Kenny Gainwell, baby. Kenny Gainwell is an absolute monster. The dude's super athletic. Like we saw him push Antonio Gibson out to wide receiver. I mean, that's how good of a running back he is. He took a year off of football because he had 4 relatives die of COVID. And he's like, obviously my family is susceptible to COVID. I cannot be around this stuff. So he spent the offseason, training and whatnot, or the season training, excuse me. He then comes to the Eagles, right? Where if they had Deuce Staley there, the dude would probably be like RB3 by this point. Instead, Deuce Staley ends up going over to the Lions. And now we have Kenny Gainwell in a great situation. This organization does not value the running back position. We just saw a team pay Miles Sanders a boatload of money, whether that's a good decision or not. They still did it for a guy they just let walk, right? And they're probably not going to end up receiving compensation for. So, Howie Roseman is not going to take a running back early, and at the very earliest, it's going to be the 62nd pick, and I still don't even see that happening. So, yeah, that's not even a conversation at this point.
Yeah, so that was my next question for you was, with the thought process of it being either that late second, possibly even the 3rd, 4th, 5th round before they go and get that running back. If you're saying they're not taking one at 10, which would be Bijan, they're not taking one at 30, which would be, any Gibbs, Charbonnet area. Is it wheels up for Gainwell in fantasy? So
it's always been wheels up for Gainwell.
Well, it's been wheels up, and then Miles Sanders decides to go off for 3 quarters, whatever.
Not at the end of the season.
No, not at the end of the season. I know you got a few more front offices and head coach trends that you would like to talk about. So, Chase, the floor is yours. Who do you want to talk about right here?
I mean, honestly, like the trends were pretty much covered. I just went through the ones that you had for the most part in terms of like guys that we want to select. But we're all aware that the front office for the Dolphins loves to crowd their running back room, loves to get multiple running backs, but they really, outside of this past year with Shanahan for the 49ers taking a running back early, it's not like they spend significant draft capital like in the organizational philosophies that are both similar, right? So a lot of people are talking about Gibbs to Miami, and I would love that. We're going to talk about that later, but I don't really see that happening in terms of the Dolphins selecting a running back with their second or their first overall pick in the draft in the second round because they had their 19th pick taken away. Matt, do you have any other organizational like philosophies where like you're like, dude, there's no way that team is doing that?
No, none off the top of my head that I can think of. I think this is overall going to be a very crazy draft tomorrow. So I'm just excited to get here, but no coaching philosophies that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas Cowboys take Bijan if he falls. That's the only guarantee.
Right?
Probably that or Dalton Kincaid because they love to take injured players. I don't know.
Yeah,
they need
it wouldn't even be Maher. Like you'd want Mayer, but like no, it's gonna be Kincaid.
What if Bijan is not there at what 20? Is it 25, 26, wherever
26,
Dallas
I think,
is,
right? 26.
Okay. What if Bijan's not there and they go the hell with it? Let's go get Roshan.
Oh, that would be such a bad pick.
Well, just keeping the
round pick.
Just keeping the
like
just the
Washington
Texas. That would be a Jerry
Dotson or something.
But it would be such a Jerry Jones pick, right? Keeping Texas with Texas.
Probably, yeah.
All right, so are we all in agreement that it is Bryce Young is going to be the pick for Carolina at the number 1 overall pick with the coaching staff of Frank Wright, Josh McCown? Is that fair to say? Everybody's, I guess that's what it's going to be, even though it probably should be C.J. Stroud and most of our.
I mean, I would take Bryce Young, but I don't know that Frank Reich.
Too.
Frank Reich has always had a tall, big quarterback, so that's kind of my big fear that it's not going to be Bryce Young. But if it were me, my card would be already submitted to take Bryce Young number 1.
Was it the news today or yesterday? Was that Levis was actually on the docket?
Yeah,
like that would be a Baker
Mayfield
Mayfield type move.
Yeah,
that would be a Baker Mayfield, and I like Levis. Like that's the thing. Like Levis, I've talked about it on the show 100 times. So if you've already heard it, go ahead, put it in the chat. You guys will already know who I'm going to say. But Jeff George, who was a guy that just had a bad attitude system, but like quick release, massive cannon for an arm, wasn't highly mobile. In fact, Levis is probably slightly more mobile than that. But like, I mean, he would have had a good career if he would have found a good team that knew how to take care of quarterbacks early on in his career. His stats were there. He just had shitty decision-making and bad turnovers. So if you can control that, which Frank Reich does a very good job at, like, why wouldn't you take a shot on Levis if you still have the mobility? Well, of course, because you have Bryce Young. But I don't think that's outlandish for somebody to do it. It went from negative or plus 4,000 to just plus 400 on the betting odds in 24 hours.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. That's insane to me. That's insane.
I'm pulling this up. Thanks, Jamie, because Jamie actually watched it. Jamie had no idea. Jamie's like, wait, who's Jeff George? And so he pulled up the film on it. He's like, oh my God, they're the same player.
They're the same guy.
They're the same player, just a couple generations apart. If Jeff George played today, he would probably be more mobile because he'd have to run more often just because of the way the game is played.
What's funny is you say that, and I actually picture them as the same person because Jeff George played in Indy, the blue and white, you had the white solid uniforms with the blue lettering. And then, of course, Will Levis not being able to play in Penn State, moves down to Kentucky with the white and blue lettering. So that actually fits, not only do they play the same, they actually wore the same uniform. So
real quick, I will say that Fly Meatwad, we actually have a segment coming up here in a second. I do want to pull up your comments and discuss that.
I do have that starred. Before we get into the perfect landing spots for some of these players, Chase, let the good people know where they can find all of their championship needs.
Oh my. I forgot the promo code now, so you're gonna have to remind me of the promo code. It's
just advice.
Oh, that's what it was. It's what we're doing. We're giving people advice, so that makes plenty of sense. No, if you guys head over to trophysmack.com, you guys can see all this stuff behind me, all this wonderful championship gear. We have customized rings, we have belts, we have trophies for your fantasy football leagues. We even came out with this new thing called Wall Smack, which you can see behind me. It's customized wall art, and it's super easy to use. You literally just pull it off the wall and put a new one on. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't want my camera to get all fuzzy like it did last week, but go check it out over there, trophysmack.com. Use promo code ADVICE. Is that for the discount for the ball spec, or is that the discount for the free ring? I just need to know.
The advice, I believe, is now the free stunner ring if you add that to your cart.
Oh, so you have to add. So you go and you get a trophy or a belt.
You spend $100
Okay,
and put a stunner in your basket or cart, and then you get that for free.
Oh,
spend
shit.
spend $100.
That's awesome.
Get a free ring.
You get a free championship ring. So like you could have one of these trophies, and you pass around the trophy from league mate to league mate, and then you get like the ring that one of them can just keep it.
Keep your own ring. Absolutely.
That's a pretty damn good deal, man. I didn't even know that.
Cannot beat it. Cannot beat it. All right, so let's get into these perfect landing spots and possibly some not so perfect landing spots. I just want to go through a couple of these players. We'll go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and then we'll see what you guys have for there. So not going to do every single one of them. I'm going to start off with Anthony Richardson, my boy out of Florida. In my opinion, he needs to sit a year, behind somebody like a Geno Smith, a Jared Goff. But I'm getting the feeling that there's a growing number of people, of course, in the fantasy realm and in the NFL that feel like he's going to start pretty damn quickly, like very quickly. So, Matt, you watch a ton of college with Campus to Canton. Anthony Richardson's biggest fault right now is his accuracy. I think he's done a little bit with his footwork, making it a little bit better. But again, there's like 4 players that's ever got into the league that has had a 55, 56% completion rate in college. And those names are not very good names, like a Mark, Boulder, something along those lines. Guys just don't make it in the league.
Yeah.
Tell me what is the landing spot that would be perfect for Anthony Richardson and possibly one that is not?
The perfect one is where I unfortunately don't think he will go, but it's Indy. Behind that offensive line with those weapons, and most importantly, Shane Steichen, who we saw give Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, is the reason Jalen Hurts just got the contract that he got and is going to be the franchise quarterback for the Eagles moving forward. He knows how to work with mobile quarterbacks. I think that he would help develop that system and slowly bring him along like he did Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. Because I think CJ Stroud it seems like he's locked in. That's like the only quarterback it seems like is actually locked into a spot. It seems like all the betting odds are putting him at 4. I do actually like the spot of Seattle. We've seen, they're not, even if say Geno were to get injured and Anthony Richardson have to play this year and not be ready, Pete Carroll is not a coach who quickly moves on from players. He sticks with them. He gives them time. And we know Pete Carroll's not going anywhere. Even if Seattle were to suck for the next couple of years, they're not moving on from Pete Carroll. I think that matters a lot for a young quarterback, because we see when these quarterbacks, coaches, and offensive coordinators are taken away every other year that these quarterbacks ruin. I think we see more quarterbacks ruined than actually get developed at the NFL level. So I want him to go somewhere where there's some stability, and I think Seattle would be the next best spot if he doesn't go Tennessee. Worst spot to go, man, I don't know, most of the league. Because I just don't feel like a lot of these places will develop him the way that he needs to be developed. There's no doubt about that. And I just feel like a lot of these coaches, especially the older coaches, they want to take that square peg and try and fit it into that round hole. They don't bring college concepts in. They just say, hey, I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, Anthony Richardson's going to thrive in my system, and doesn't help build the system around him. So I think there's very few landing spots that would really help out a player like Anthony Richardson. Atlanta's another one that I think would be great with Arthur Smith, but I don't know that they'll go. Oh, I think it would be great. Yeah, what Arthur Smith was able to do for Ryan Tannehill. I mean, for those of you who don't know, he was actually a wide receiver in college. Did not play quarterback that much at Texas A&M. Comes out, is not going to be the guy at Miami. Goes to Tennessee, and then when Arthur Smith took over as offensive play caller, he ended up having his best years in fantasy altogether. And that's why I was personally high on the landing spot of Desmond Ridder last year, because I thought he was going to be able to help him out. So I think it would be a good spot for Anthony Richardson. But yeah, outside of those two, really, in the Colts and Seattle, I think a lot of spots would be very bad for Richardson.
Okay, so Chase, I'm going to send you to Will Levis. If you've got anything,
come on! I don't even get to cover Richardson.
No. If you want to add on to Richardson, go right ahead. But then go right into your favorite quarterback. The mayonnaise in the coffee, eating bananas with a peel on, Will Levis.
Oh my God, dude, this guy's a monster. But real quick to Anthony Richardson's point, like Tannehill still had some great years in Miami, of course. And it was weird because it was during what's his name's tenure that everybody can't stand, including myself. Adam Gase, right? So it was brutal. It was really bad. But he had 2 good years in there. The issue was he couldn't stay healthy, right? So he was somebody that developed into a starting quarterback, and I think he was taken like 9th overall, but that was a project. And by the time he hit Tennessee, it was a little bit different. We'll talk about that here in a second. But the Seahawks, for Anthony Richardson's number 1 to sit behind Geno Smith. They know that they can develop young quarterbacks. The Raiders are interesting because they're my least favorite spot, but they're also my favorite spot. It just depends on, how they try to mold Richardson, because we all know how much like of an ego twist this coach has, where he has to have it his way. We saw it with Derek Carr, where Derek Carr didn't want to play by his rules. Derek Carr's gone. So if Anthony Richardson can adjust to the scheme, it's the best fit for him because he can sit behind Garoppolo for a year, learn the offense. If he doesn't adjust, then it's the worst fit because he'll be out of the league, in 4 or 5 years. And the Lions are the third, just because they're going to have so many offensive weapons by the time he's ready to start. When we talk about Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, whatever tight end they end up picking up, if they end up picking a tight end up, probably another receiver is likely to go there as well. So they're going to be a stacked team by the time he's there. Now, Will Levis, this is where I actually like the Falcons to grab him. And I don't know if it's going to happen now. We'll see, because as you brought up, right? You brought up Ryan Tannehill, mobile quarterback, somebody that thrives in this system. But the deal with like Anthony Richardson, why I don't like him as much for the Falcons as why I like a guy like Will Levis is Will Levis still has some ability, right? But his thought process isn't to scramble first. And we saw a guy like Desmond Ridder whose thought process was to scramble or get outside the pocket immediately, especially on these bootlegs. And they were trying to design like the scheme to fit him. And that's not the type of scheme that the Falcons run. If we look at the Titans, they like to be patient. They like to run, set up the play action fake and get the ball deep downfield accurately. And although Anthony Richardson did that, he had one of the highest accuracy ratings for deep balls of any quarterback in the draft. Like he's up there in terms of the last 10 years even. It's still a process in his head to run first typically. It destroys the entire game plan. It gets the game plan out of whack because they put so much work into setting up a 50-yard gain on a reception that by scrambling, now you have to go back and work your way back into setting up this play again. So scramble will typically get you 8-10 yards maybe, but that's not what they're trying to accomplish. That's not the speed of the game. That's how you wear down the offensive line as well, because you're scrambling all the time. And that's not the type of offense that the Titans like to run. So I think Will Levis actually fits perfectly with the Titans, somebody that can get the ball deep downfield, somebody that can make those. I know he doesn't make good decisions, but he could still make some of the right decisions, and get taught the way as to how to function with this offense. So, I mean, very similar to my belief with Matt, like you need a mobile quarterback to run this system. You have to have him, but you don't want him to be a guy who wants to run all the time because it just destroys the system. Now, I could be dead wrong, right? Like we could see him moving the chains on every single scramble with Richardson and him destroying defenses and defenses breaking down by the end of the game so he can deliver those deep shots. And all of a sudden it's different. But in my opinion, I would like to see Levis land with the Falcons as an ideal landing spot with a big arm to operate this offense. The second thought is the Colts. I just love the Colts there. And then the Lions would also be number 3 for this one for my pick as well.
Yeah, I kind of did a Shane right there and just kind of blocked you out what you were saying there. But the one thing I did, I just had to get Shane in the show here. No, the one thing that I will say is a stat that I saw today. Anthony Richardson for this past year, 14 sacks on the whole year, right?
Yeah. Oh, he's so
out
good.
Of these quarterbacks, there's only one quarterback that had less sacks, and that was C.J. Stroud at 10. So he doesn't get, yes, maybe he's only getting the 10 yards or 8-10 yards on a scramble, but dude, there's no DB that wants to face him head up, 240 pounds coming at you at a 21 point whatever 4 miles an hour. And that he's running at you. Yeah. They don't want to hit him. So, Matt, I want to hear about Will Levis for you as well. But tell me about C.J. Stroud, your guy from Ohio State.
So, do you want me to go to the negative or the positive?
Go, you do you, baby.
All right, I'll just follow up on Will Levis because that's who we were just talking about. I'm not a big fan of Will Levis. I think he is a tad bit overrated. I actually wouldn't mind the spot of Tennessee. I think the better landing spot, at least in my opinion, for him would be Tampa Bay. They have a little bit of a better.
No, I'm canceling him. I'm canceling him right now. I do not want to see want to see Levis in Tampa.
They have a decent offensive line, and the weapons I think will help his overall accuracy issues, which I think are there. My big issue with Levis, I don't disagree with some of the things that Chase said. He is mobile, and he can do that. He didn't do it as much last year, but he's also dealing with a foot injury that I don't think a lot of people talked about, so that did limit his mobility. And he's got a great arm. My biggest thing with Levis is I just feel like he's late on a lot of his throws, and he tries to thrive too much with that arm strength, which will work for you in college. It will not work for you in the NFL. Those windows get tighter and smaller every level you go up, and you cannot be late on those throws. He doesn't have a lot of anticipatory throws, and he also puts them in a lot of, in my opinion, he puts the ball in a lot of bad ball placement as well. There's a couple throws that I go to specifically, one against Tennessee and one against Georgia. The Georgia one, he had, I believe it was Dane Key in the right corner of the end zone who had beat Keely Ringo, who's considered one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and he underthrows it. Keely Ringo picks it off, goes back. I don't think he returned it for a touchdown, but I know he went back for a little bit. The other one was Tennessee, where Barry and Brown, he was playing one-on-one with the defensive back, and I mean, he cooked the defensive back. He had easily 3 or 4 yards of separation, and at least with the Georgia one, there was pressure in his face, so I kind of get him underthrowing that a little bit because he couldn't really step into it, even with the strong arm. You do have to get some of your leg into it to get it down the field. But with the Barry and Brown one, it was the left side of the field. The pocket was wide open. I mean, he had nobody near him, and he even stepped up into it, but he tried to put the ball placement back shoulder instead of leading Barry and Brown down the field, which would have been an easy 70-yard touchdown. Instead, he tried to put it back shoulder. The cornerback for Tennessee picked it off, and I believe he actually did return it for a touchdown. At the NFL, you can't make those decisions, and that's kind of my big fear with Levis. So that's why I like, though, the Tampa Bay landing spot, because you got guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who I think will help him in that area a ton, and they should be good for at least the next couple of years. CJ Stroud, I think the Colts would be the great spot for him. They're a ready to win now team, right? Great offensive line. You've got Jonathan Taylor. You've got Michael Pittman. Who else have they just, I actually kind of like Alec Pierce. And if they draft another wide receiver, I think they're going to be a very good team. CJ Stroud, I do have some fears with him. I don't like the narrative of, well, he had a top offensive line and he had all these wide receivers around him. It's not his fault that Ohio State recruits well and that he plays with good talent. If he wasn't good, he wouldn't have put up the stats that he put up. I think that's an indicator that he is still good, that he was able to do what he did. But he is horrible out of structure. And I love the kid. I think he's a phenomenal player. But if he's not in the pocket, he can't throw on the run. He panics when the defense gets in his face. Now, he's really good at stepping up in the pocket, but if he's flushed out right or left, he just cannot throw on the run, which is why I like the landing spot of Indianapolis, because I think they'll protect him well, and he knows and diagnoses defenses incredibly well. The best part of his game, I know everybody looks at that arm and his anticipation throws. To me, the best part of his game is his mind and how he is able to diagnose defenses and know exactly where he needs to go with the ball at all times on the field, and I think he would thrive in a place like Indy. Coincidentally enough, the worst spot I think for him to go would be to the Houston Texans at 2, because Houston does not have a good offensive line. They do not have pieces around him. I think he would just struggle because of that. But I do think outside of that really the Texans, and I really can't think of any other team off the top of my head that needs a quarterback that would take him. I think that CJ Stroud will likely be fine everywhere he goes, but if you want him to be a top 10 to 12 fantasy quarterback, I think Indy is the place that he has to go to thrive to get to that level.
Yeah, I know we're talking about this class, but Matt just brought up a wide receiver out of Kentucky that I think if you're not playing the C2C or in Devy, you definitely need to keep an eye on, and that's Brown. Going to be an absolute stud. Love that guy as a player. Matt, we're knocking on the door 50 minutes. We've only gotten through the quarterbacks. Are you good to hang out for a little while? And okay, cool.
Yeah, we're good.
It's the night before the draft. We're gonna go a little bit long tonight. Chase, are you gonna be okay to stay up after your bedtime tonight? I mean, I know it's getting late.
I'm done by an hour.
All right.
When have you ever heard me say that? I'm the one that wants the show to last 3 hours every damn night.
Chase gets off of here and goes, okay, I gotta go play best ball now. He's on best ball all night long. All right, so let's get into some of these running backs. Let's pull up this Fly Meat had this question. Bijan Robinson. Chase, I'm going to send Bijan to you because I know how much Matt loves Bijan. He even, listen, Austin left and went out of town, left the credit card. Matt went and stole the credit card, bought a Bijan jersey, signed jersey, said he was going to give it away to people on his show. And I think I think he put Wilson on top now. That's just a piece of tape. But that's a Bijan jersey right behind him. If he did,
yeah, I was hoping you weren't going to remember that. I don't know why you're giving away trade secrets.
Oh, I mean, it was out there. It was out there, and of course, Austin was not happy about that because of his credit card bill. But anyway, Bijan Robinson, best landing spot in your mind. Fly Meat puts up here the expected teams that are interested is Atlanta, Houston, and Philly. Not sure any of those take him. So, Chase, where is Bijan's best spot? And possibly give me a worse spot. I've got a couple worse spots in my head, too.
All right. For fantasy purposes, right, I would hate to see Atlanta. I would hate that because although they run it a ton, right, everybody's like, oh, well, they ran it the most times in the NFL. Yeah. Well, yeah, but you get so much more value from receiving work than what you get from rushing work. Like, why would you want him to get rushing yards and get beat up in fantasy early on in his career, similar to what we've seen with like JT or somebody, where he's just literally going to get like just crushed, and then he's going to have no fantasy value in 3 years. Like, you don't want to see that. You want him to get receiving work. And if somebody like Desmond Ridder ends up working in Atlanta, you're screwed. Like, he's never going to pass the running back. So for me, Atlanta's a bad spot. Also, I don't see them drafting him there. They have too many other needs, and it's too early for Atlanta. Houston, once again, just don't see them drafting. I don't know why that's one of the favorites. It just doesn't make much sense to me. And then Philly, I've talked about how Philly is not going to happen for Bijan. Like, maybe if he falls all the way to 30, it could happen. I would bet against all three of those. What I would bet for is the Vikings, who can move on from Dalvin Cook and save a ton of cap space. And they're already a run-heavy team to an extent that needs a more efficient runner. Like, the reason why they passed so much this past year was because, Dalvin Cook was so inefficient. So if they can get a replacement for a better version, essentially, of Dalvin Cook, dude, Bijan's a home run for the Vikings. The Bengals, once again, with Joe Mixon, that makes a ton of sense. It hurts a little bit because you're not going to get as much passing work, but you're going to have boom weeks with him where he does get passing work and it's going to be sick. And then, of course, the Cowboys, who, love that primary running back, and it might suck for year one, but, dude, as soon as Tony Pollard leaves, guess what happens to Bijan Robinson's value? It goes to the roof, and then you trade him away for like 4 first-round picks or 5 first-round picks, because that's going to be his going cost as soon as Tony Pollard leaves the building. So that's where I want to see Bijan go, especially if I have the 101 and I want to take Bijan like that. I'm praying that he ends up on one of these spots. Like, I don't even want him to go to the Bills. I want him to go to the Vikings, the Bengals, or the Cowboys because of what the future value will happen for him in future years.
Matt, what do you got on this?
I mean, I don't think there's anywhere that's a bad spot. But that's also because I think Bijan is just extremely talented. I mean, his ability to, his vision and footwork behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, for anybody who if you go watch Bijan's highlights, that's great and all. What I would say is just go watch one game.
Welcome back, Dave.
Just go watch his game against Alabama after Quinn Ewers gets hurt, and that defensive line is just teeing off on the Texas offensive line. There are times where Dallas Turner, who's probably going to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft, and Will Anderson, who we expect to be a top 5 pick in this year's draft, are in the backfield the minute Hudson Card said hut, and Bijan was making them miss and still getting 5 or 6 yards. That's how talented this guy is. I love the Vikings call. My 2 favorites, and Chase mentioned them as well, Dallas, which I do think if he falls that far, Jerry Jones he will not be able to pass that up. He just won't. And I agree with what Chase said. Like, he may not have a great year this year, but like, imagine if you guys can go back and remember what prime Zeke was, but then increase the talent level because Bijan is better than Zeke. And I love Zeke Elliott. He brought us a national championship to Ohio State. Bijan is a much better player. My sneaky landing spot, and they're picking in the early 20s. The Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah.
They love to throw to the with Eckler, like he stays there and plays out his contract like he said, but then he's gone. And then you have a team with Justin Herbert, who we know likes to run the ball. Herbert has no qualms whatsoever with checking down to the running back. Like, I think that would be a great spot for him as well. I think any of those teams in the 20s range that Chase mentioned, and the Chargers. I actually wouldn't mind the Bills because I do think they want to get away from using Josh Allen as that battering ram at the goal line, but I think that would probably be the worst of all those spots based on when you're looking at Minnesota, the Chargers, and Cowboys. But I think any of those spots, wherever Bijan goes, he's just that special. He's going to thrive. Like, I just see someone put even New England. I disagree. I think he would thrive in New England. Like, Bijan is just that damn talented. And we actually have seen, I know Bill Belichick and the Patriots get this moniker for being a team that uses multiple backs, but when he has a back that he actually trusts and can do everything, he will give them the ball. And I think the minute Bijan steps in there, like maybe they'll let Stevenson do his thing this year, last year of his contract, and then it'll be wheels up for Bijan. I think he's just that special.
Yeah, so good buddy of mine, Nick Script, put out there this morning a comment about a trade. Just of course all speculation here. Tennessee trading Derrick Henry to Atlanta, and then Tennessee turning right around and doing very similar to what they did last year with A.J. Brown, then selecting Bijan. But I actually
Bijan doesn't have enough speed to play that role.
I hadn't even thought about what Chase said with the Minnesota pick, right? Dalvin Cook is Dalvin Cook. I don't know if he wants out or if it's just Minnesota wants to trade him, but he did come out today and say that his favorite landing spot or trade spot would be Miami. I mean, I think if they could do that on the clock, oh my goodness, I love the landing spot in Minnesota. So that's a great call, Chase. I love that. I hadn't even really thought about Bijan in Minnesota because of all the hype of Bijan to Dallas. Let's look at Zach Charbonnet here. Where do you have Zach Charbonnet as your favorite landing spot? This is a guy that I truly think, and I said this the other night, I caught a lot of hell from Chase. I think, I got Bijan, Charbonnet, and who was the other one that I said right off the top of my head? Tank Bigsby as 3 down backs going into, out of this draft, going into the NFL. I truly, truly like Zach Charbonnet. Matt, where is the best landing spot for Charbonnet? And is he a true 3 down back like I think he is?
He definitely has a chance to be. He's a much better receiver than I think people give him credit for. I'm just going to say this now as like a blanket statement. Miami is the best spot for any running back just because of Mike McDaniels, and I do think Charbonnet would thrive there, especially because they do use that zone scheme, and Chip Kelly does as well at UCLA, so I think he would really kind of thrive there. Some sneaky ones that I really like for him, we still don't know what's going on with Joe Mixon. I think he would be a great guy to go in there to Cincinnati and work with Joe Burrow and that offense.
Yep.
Who was the other one? I was trying to think of who it was, and now I can't remember for the life of me. Dang it! There was
Matt,
one.
You got my number one spot. You got my number one spot.
Was it Cincinnati or the Bengals? Okay, I think he's a great player to land there. There's one other, and now for the life of me, I cannot remember who it is. But I think he does have a chance to be a 3 down back. He's one of the probably 4 players in this draft. I think I am a little hesitant. I'll put Tank Bigsby up there, but I do think Charbonnet has a chance to be. Even though I feel like the NFL is kind of moving away from that. Right.
Chase, what do you got on Charbonnet? And then move right into your boy, Zach Evans. Nah, I'm saying.
It's Philly. My bad. I was trying to remember who it was. Chase mentioned earlier they tend to take 60s, running backs around I think Charbonnet would fit.
They only did it once. And that was Miles Sanders. But outside of that, it's 5th round or later.
Yeah.
So I have the Giants potentially as a team that could take Charbonnet. And then I have the Vikings as well. I think the Vikings could look into him in the 2nd or 3rd rounds, depending on how much he falls. I saw a post the other day where somebody was put $1,000 on the the draft only having 3 running backs selected by the end of the 3rd round. And I don't see that happening, but it's interesting to note that people are actually viewing this as a situation where all the running backs get pushed so far back. And so if that happens, if he ends up making it to the 3rd round, Giants, Vikings, great spot, even 2nd round, I'll take that. Now, my guy is Gibbs, right? And there's one team, and you said it just a second ago, Matt, but it's Dolphins, baby. That is the one team where he could succeed. The issue with him, right, is they tend to use a zone run scheme, but a wide zone run scheme would get him crushed. And the reason why these running backs come in to the 49ers and they got a ton of speed, right? And they got a ton of burst. We talk about the Colemans of the world, the Jared McKinnons when they try to revitalize his career after the Vikings. We talk about Elijah Mitchell, right, where they're super efficient, right? They crush anytime they touch the field, but they get injured. And it's because of the fact that they use a inside/outside wide zone runs, or inside zone run scheme, and then an outside wide zone run scheme. And typically the Titans, for example, that's what they use is a wide zone run scheme. Atlanta, they use a wide zone run scheme. And what you need is a ton of burst, and you need a ton of physicality, and you need a ton of upper body strength, because you run sideways until you end up finding a hole. You have to get out before that defensive end ends up coming from behind. And then once you find that hole, you get upfield. And if there's no hole, you just have to run into the defensive line. And you have to run into these 300-pound dudes who will deck you. So I'm a little bit concerned that Jamar Gibbs, if he does end up going to the Dolphins, that he'll end up having an injury-plagued career, because he's taken a 200-pound frame and he's just rammed it into 300-pound dudes all day. And that's not what I want to see. But, dude, you're going to get some great games out of him. You're going to get probably a couple great seasons out of him. It's just longevity I'm worried about. My other name that I would love to see him land with is the Rams. I think that fitting in the system with the Rams and, splitting work with Cam Akers for 1 year, maybe 2 years if they decide to retain Cam Akers, then that's a home run play on a dynamic offense that is on the path to rebuild very quickly, but they'll likely bring in a younger quarterback to go through this rebuild, which the tendencies show that rookie quarterbacks actually do use running backs as dump offs. Hopefully it's just not a mobile quarterback that ends up playing in there. But I really like the Rams. The Dolphins, the right answer, though.
Yeah, I like those. My only sneaky one, and I do think there's a shot of. I think Gibbs likely goes at the end of the first round tomorrow night, so I don't think he falls this far. But if he gets into the second round, I would love if the Carolina Panthers took him. Because Frank Reich runs this very intriguing kind of gap run schemes that I think would help Jahmyr Gibbs. On top of that, we've seen what he was able to do with Nyheim Hines, where he loves to throw him the ball. I think if they took Bryce Young there, we've seen he has no qualms whatsoever about checking the ball down either when he was at Alabama. And I do think that Frank Reich, one of my biggest gripes about him for Jonathan Taylor, I think would actually work for Jahmyr Gibbs, and that he wouldn't give him the ball 20 plus times a game. He was very smart about the way he used him and Nyheim Hines. And while he would limit probably Gibbs' touches because of how explosive Gibbs is, I think he would excel in those touches, and he would get receiving work as well. So I would like Carolina to take him, but Miami, I don't actually mind the Rams one because of just how, in my opinion, how brilliant Sean McVay is. I think he'd figure out a way to make that work, but Miami would be a smash landing spot for Gibbs as well.
So real quick, I do want to bring this up. Mr. Padilla said the Rams would be a terrible idea, and I don't understand why, because they typically use slash running backs, guys like Kendry Miller, who would be another great fit there. But, they use guys who have burst speed to get on the outside, and then they've been trying to find a running back that can catch passes, and that hasn't been the case. They haven't been able to find one. They've tried to find these guys throughout drafts every single year. Sean McVay loves his running back catching passes. He brings up the fiasco with Akers in the first part of the season. That doesn't have an effect typically on fantasy football, and we don't know what actually happened behind closed doors. I'm looking at the talent and the situation, and I'm telling you, if we have a guy with the explosiveness of Jahmyr Gibbs getting slashing down work, we're talking about chopping off 7 to 15-yard gains on 30% of the plays. That's a massive opportunity with an offense that passes to the running back, which we've seen the statistics. I think it's 2.4 times the value of what a carry is for a pass catching opportunity. I'll take it.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about the Rams, but I think that would be a great spot for him.
It's just if the Rams, do they want to spend an early pick on a running back? I don't think that happens. Their first overall pick of the draft in the second round.
They don't care about the picks anyway. They'll go and sign somebody, right? F them picks, right?
No, not the past year. So they've gone into a complete almost rebuild mode while still trying to retain their offensive talent. They've
had to because they got their ring, and they paid for the ring. They bought it, whatever. They still earned it on the field. So I don't mind the Rams at all right there. And you can't look at past players and see what those injuries, of course. And project that onto the incoming class. Tajay Spears. Let's talk about Tajay Spears, Matt. Coming, smaller school guy,
Yep.
But when he was able to play the bigger school, he produced and probably what would be the biggest lights, the biggest stage that he was on coming out of Tulane.
Yeah, I do not think Tyjae Spears has a shot to be a workhorse back. I think he's going to be best to be in a committee. He can catch the ball. He's perfectly fine. So one of the spots for me, again, would be Philadelphia because they pick so late. I know a lot of people think Tyjae Spears is going in the second round. I don't. I actually think there's a better shot. He's a day 3 guy. And some of that just because of the medicals with his knee as well. Like, I've seen a lot of people pumping him up. I don't know.
I thought you were about to say the first round, dude.
No,
I was like, wait, what?
No.
Because you're like their later pick. Like people are talking about second round. I really think he's about to go in the first. Dude, I was like,
no. I would not be surprised if he's a day 3 guy. Other one, Detroit. I think that he could fit in well in that offense. I really like that the fit there with David Montgomery. I think that he would pair well with.
Look, he didn't even bring up Swift. He's
well, Swift is going to be gone after this year. So I mean, I love Swift, and I think that they criminally misused him, and then obviously the injuries have really kind of hurt him as well. I think Swift just needs to go on to a better point. I would not be surprised if he has a really good career wherever he goes after this. So I just think they need to bring somebody in to replace him. I think he can play like 50% of the Swift role, or at least what we saw of Swift when he was healthy. So I think he'd be a good fit there with David Montgomery.
Yeah, Dynasty Jax down here brings up the Spears, but ensure Gainwell is not an RB1 in Philly. Dude, that's not going to happen because the RB1 for the entire NFL is Kenny Gainwell for.
Oh God, no. Okay, so just so you know, I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys this right now. I jumped on this Swift RB1 bandwagon last year. And Chase was like, hell yeah, that's what we're doing. So I am completely off the Gainwell one this year. I am not jumping on Chase's bandwagon.
That was a joke last year. This year's kind of a joke too, but you know. No, the RB1, not a RB1. All right, so I have Spears going, and this is tough because Jaylen Warren did such a good job replacing Najee Harris when he's injured, but I think he's interesting with the Steelers, depending on what happens with Jaylen Warren. The Chiefs is interesting as a backup for Pacheco to offer some pass catching ability. It's a little bit worrisome because they like their running backs typically develop a little bit longer. They like their veterans. They like their dudes. But Isaiah Pacheco might have put a little chink in that armor, or that belief at least. And then the Bengals, if they keep Joe Mixon. So he's not going to go there if they don't keep Joe Mixon because they'll get a guy like Charbonnet, a guy like that can take the primary work. But if they keep Joe Mixon for this year, Tyjae Spears ends up being that pass catcher running back and takes over the Chris Evans role. And then Joe Mixon gets a suspension? Like, that's sexy. Like, that right there, where we don't think he's going to be a 3-down back. We don't ever think that's going to happen. They'll probably likely bring in a backup running back at that point, a free agent. Melvin Gordon could make a lot of sense, right? Where they could take the early down role. But like, dude, Tyjae Spears will get a lot more work if Joe Mixon ends up staying this year and then ends up getting suspended. So that's more of a lottery shot, but that's kind of like one of my hopes is that Tyjae Spears goes to the Bengals and they end up keeping or retaining Joe Mixon.
So Matt, I want to give you a choice here. Do we even want to bring up Zach Evans, or do we just want to go right over to Izzy? Go ahead and say it for me, Matt.
Abanaconda?
Abanaconda, yeah. There you go.
Or Abanacanda. Yeah. I think it's Abanacanda, actually.
Is it really? Is it Canada? I've been saying Abanaconda.
I say Abanaconda, but I'm also horrible pronouncing names. I'm almost positive it's actually Abanacanda.
Just call him Izzy. It's Izzy.
Yeah. It's Izzy.
I think I actually like Zach Evans. He's still my RB3 in the class. I think he's an extremely talented player, and I think some of the off-field stuff has been a little bit overstated with him, and I think he'll be fine when he gets into the NFL. There are definitely some concerns. I don't think he's going to go day 2 anymore like I thought he would. Denver, with their West Coast scheme now with Sean Payton, I think would be a good fit. And Cleveland, I actually think he would be a great backup to Nick Chubb, and I really hope the Browns draft him. So those would be my 2 for him. For Izzy, I don't know. I really don't, because I do like him, and I feel like going back to Miami would be the perfect fit for him as well. I like Buffalo for a fit for him. I've been kind of torn on, and I don't know why, but this one has kind of stuck with me. I kind of want him to go to Houston because I feel like with his explosive running style, I feel like he would pair very well with Dameon Pierce, and I just feel like those two would be able to help support whatever quarter, assuming Houston takes a quarterback or two, which I don't think is a certainty, would help kind of allow whatever quarterback that is to have some success. But I don't think that happens because maybe Izzy goes day 3 or in round 3. But for me, I mean, Miami would be the perfect fit, I think, for Israel Bonacana with how explosive he can be.
Yeah, I want to say I find it funny that every single one of these running backs are going to end up in Miami.
Miami's got to get one, right?
Miami, he's not going to Miami. Get out of here. And honestly, I did actually have it as an interesting spot with Miami. But no, so every other like running back I've had that we talked about so far, I have or any other player, I have landing spot 1, landing spot 2, landing spot 3, and that's literally how I've done it. If I need to note something that I might forget, I have it on here on my show sheet. I have Saints and Raiders are interesting. Like I have Ravens makes sense. Would love the Dolphins or Rams. The Cardinals would be amazing if they could get him in the 3rd. Like I don't know where I would like to see him. Like that's the reality of like I have opinions, but like I don't know a landing spot that I would be like stoked to see him in outside of maybe Arizona. I think that Arizona would be great because he could take over the primary role. If James Conner ends up getting hurt towards the tail end of the season, which we all know James Conner is susceptible to. So it would be great to see Izzy go to the Cardinals and then take over that bell cow role if he does well, right? And then they don't have to draft a running back or spend draft capital on a running back. But it's like, how late will he go? If he goes in the 2nd round, it's not going to be the Cardinals. Even the 3rd round, the Cardinals, I think, would have to trade back to get him. And it makes sense for the Cardinals because they have so many holes to fill. And go-to organizations won't fill their first needs with running backs. But if there was a way that they could end up with Izzy in the 3rd or 4th round, late 3rd, early 4th round, because he falls, like that's probably my favorite landing spot. But yeah, Ravens are great too.
Arizona. Okay, I hadn't even really thought about Arizona. Anything on Zach Evans for you? I mean, Matt has him at RB3, so.
So this is also something a little bit not what I've been doing, a little bit inconsistent with what I've been doing. I said I don't care. Sorry, okay. I'm not a big Zach Evans guy. He's supposed to weigh 215. He comes in at 208. So he goes from what's supposed to be a bell cow back to or a potential bell cow back if he can throw on some weight, 5-6 pounds. He goes from that aspect to a guy that has to catch passes. He didn't catch passes when he was in college. Didn't he also have to transfer schools too? Wasn't he at like TCU? He was outplayed by Kendry Miller, so he had to transfer and go to a lesser school. And Kendry Miller was supposed to be better.
No, he didn't go to a lesser school. He went to Ole Miss, which is an SEC school.
He transferred. So when he transferred out of TCU, Kendry Miller was nobody. I know a lot of people think Kendry Miller was not what he was his junior year. He did stop playing at TCU because they fired Gary Patterson midseason. And that was the coach who really heavily recruited him and brought him to TCU. So and I will be honest, he gets a lot of the hate for this, but it was like him and 15 other players all said they were not going to play the rest of the season because TCU just fired Gary Patterson with like no warning. So he did transfer to Ole Miss, but that is the reason why. Kendry Miller then ended up benefiting from that in a massive way. So I'm sure Kendry does not care, but Kendry wasn't like doing what he did his junior season before Zach Evans transferred.
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense. That makes a lot more sense than what I was thinking. I was like, why? Because I'm going through like the numbers previously, and I don't follow college ball. I end up looking at the statistics and watching the film after. So that makes a lot more sense to me.
All right, so let's get into some of these wide receivers. I didn't want to dive into all of them. There's so many of them that are just all mid to me. Maybe I'm wrong, Matt. You can correct me if I am. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Cedric Tillman. I'm wondering if people aren't talking about him as much as I think they should because of possibly Jalen Hyatt, which we'll talk about possibly later on. But what do you see with Cedric Tillman, and where do you see the right spot for him to be?
So I like. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Chase. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I have to interrupt because Husker hit me up on the show and says, "Yep, Chase offer sent." So, I mean, sorry, trade alert. We gotta take a pause real quick because I think.
Yes. Are we doing one live?
Yeah, I think he's smoking crack.
I want to
ask you guys just in case we might have to call like an ambulance to his house real quick because he sent me Traylon Burks in the 109 is what I get.
Mm-hmm.
For the 111, a 208, and a 2024 first round pick.
See you bye. Except
what? No. What? No,
you're getting Traylon Burks.
Yeah, and the 109.
For.
And I'm sending away the 111, so 2 picks later, the 208, and then a 2024 first.
Oh, okay. I missed the first.
Oh
okay,
yeah, no.
So okay, if it was just the 2 picks, I'd say bye. But the 24 first, no.
Yeah, no.
Now you need to call
crack. Like I wouldn't even take it. I don't think I would take it. No, I'd take it if it was the 109, the 111, and the 208. But like that would at least make me think about it.
Right.
Like you're gonna throw in a 2024 first with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Caleb Wood. Like, what are you smoking, dude? How good is this draft class going to be in 2024, Matt?
Well, hang on one second before you answer that, Matt, because I do want Matt to answer that question. Husker, you do not put that on the stream if you don't want it to be put on the stream. So just so you know. All right, Matt, answer that question. How good is this 24 class going to be?
I mean, I feel like everybody always says next year's class is going to be better, but I do believe that next year's first round for fantasy
early picks
has a chance to be 1 through 12. You're getting an elite player in every single pick, especially if the quarterbacks end up panning out the way that we think they can. You'll have 4 or 5 quarterbacks. You'll have a couple running backs. You'll have at least 2 wide receivers, both out of Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. We'll see what Xavier Worthy, Malik Neighbors do. Like, they're both very intriguing players. So there's a chance for, and then obviously you have Brock Bowers, who's clearly going to be one of the best tight ends I think we're going to see coming up. He's on the Kyle Pitts level, although Kyle Pitts obviously hasn't really thrived in the NFL.
Hey, Husker, I think, left the chat. I don't think he's here anymore.
So,
hurt his feelings.
So I heard from a scout the other day. They went to actually. I didn't hear directly from the scout, so don't take it that way. I heard a scout say this the other day, or said this about he went to go and watch Harrison Jr. at Ohio State for I guess the spring game or whatever, and he could not get his eyes off Mbikwe.
Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, he couldn't even watch Harrison Jr. because he was watching this guy. He just stood out so much.
Over Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yes.
I mean, so Emeka is a very, very good player. He was the number 1 wide receiver in that class. People forget because Marvin Harrison Jr. has just been that good. But Emeka Egbuka is a very, very talented player as well.
Oh, he said I read it wrong, bro. I did not read it wrong.
There you go.
I did not read it wrong.
There we go. He's back in the chat, Chase. All right, so tell me about Cedric Tillman and when your thought process, where he can go. What is his outlook in fantasy, Matt?
So I really do like Cedric Tillman. I actually like him more than I like Jalen Hyatt. But I don't know that he has this high ceiling play. He's not a guy who is ever going to, I think, be in the wide receiver 1 range. I think at best he's probably a low end wide receiver 2. He's got really good arrogant hands is what I call it. Like he will pluck the ball out of the air regardless of the traffic around him. Really good body control and really good at creating separation, but he's not a burner. He's unfortunately more of like a contested catch guy, which we've kind of seen the NFL move away from. Like they don't thrive as much in the NFL. So that worries me for him. I don't know landing spot wise because I think he's probably a day 3 guy, which typically those wide receivers unfortunately don't hit. And I think he needs to go to an offense where he's not going to be the one. One that really stands out to me is I would love to see him in Houston, again, assuming that they draft a quarterback and they kind of pair him with that guy, him being the 2 there. I think he could be fine across Nico Collins as the 2. Green Bay, but I think he would be kind of redundant with Romeo Doubs, so I don't know if he would go there. I like Chicago before they made all the trades that they made. I actually kind of like Pittsburgh as well until they made the trade for Allen Robinson. So like Tillman is a very he's a guy I just don't know because like the other spot I think he'd be perfect for is New England, but I just don't want any wide receiver to go to New England because I think that's the place that wide receivers need to go to die, unfortunately. So I don't have a great landing spot for him.
Yeah, see, I don't like the landing spot in Houston right now because word is that Mechie's back. Mechie was on the field evidently over the last day or 2. So
Mechie's a guy I think they could put in the slot, though, and put Tillman on the outside. So you got Collins and Tillman on the outside and then Mechie in the slot, which I think, again, would help Tillman because he's not – I don't think he'd be the guy. I think Nico would be the guy. Not that I think Nico's a stud wide receiver, but I think he would be the one, and you have Mechie in the slot with Tillman on the other the other outside.
Fair. That's fair. All right, Chase, what do you got? Tillman, if you want to talk about Tillman, and then go ahead and talk about Josh Downs and why Josh Downs is going to be the number one wide receiver taken in this draft. Oh, I thought you've said that before, right?
No, hell no. No, so Cedric Tillman for me, I'm not really interested. I think that I might be interested if he lands to the Rams, Cardinals, or Bucks. And that's if the Cardinals trade Hopkins. So then he's force-fed targets because there's nobody else to throw to over there outside of Marquise Brown and, of course, Rondo Moore. Jags are kind of interesting, like, to an extent. Not really, though. I think they need a possession receiver, and he could play that role. The Bucks might get rid of Mike Evans, so maybe he takes over that role. But I don't like it. A question for you, Matt, that I have real quick is, isn't Nico Collins and Cedric Tillman the same player almost?
Almost. Nico Collins, I believe, is more of a downfield threat than Cedric Tillman is. Collins can challenge downfield. I don't think you'll ever see that from Tillman, personally.
So he's a poor man's version of Nico Collins, which is nothing.
Yeah.
I think he's also slower, though, right? He's slower than Collins.
He can't create separation. He's like a Dez Bryant F version. If Dez Bryant's an A, he's like a Dez Bryant F. Can't create separation. He tries to play bully ball, but he doesn't have the weight yet. He might gain the weight, once he's in the pro, but he's not good. He's better than Hyatt. I'll take him over Hyatt, but I'm not a big fan of Tillman. As for Josh Downs, I'm interested in him. I think that he could play a role for the Chargers as that slot guy once they decide to move on from Keenan Allen. I think that he works with the Bears, not this year, but next year after they move on from Claypool, just to be that guy in the short range that Justin Fields doesn't have to launch the ball to. He can use him as a relief valve. He also doesn't have to run and take the hit. And the Bengals take over for Tyler Boyd. But for me, Josh Downs is a guy that I want to see sit a year and play just third downs primarily up until he ends up getting some weight put on him. Because right now, what are he weighing at 170 or something? And he's going to be playing the slot. That's not attractive to me. A guy that's 170 pounds that plays a slot, he's going to get decked a lot. So he's going to have to run these deep to intermediate slot routes. And those typically don't get a lot of targets. Those are made to create screen plays and whatnot for the X receiver to come across and get open in the middle. We've seen Christian Kirk run these at the beginning of his career. We've seen players like that Zay Jones, I think, was one of those guys too, who started out in the slot trying to run these deep routes. They don't get a lot of targets. You have to really, not only does the corner have to blow the coverage of the linebacker who's ever lined up against them, but then the deep safety has to blow that same coverage. And so it's not very often that we see these players their production come to fruition in the first year or two. It takes a little time. And in fantasy, especially the wide receiver position, we want immediate value. So for me, Josh Downs, I'm going to have very few shares of him at first.
All right, Matt. So I'll let you touch on Josh Downs, but I want you to hit on Zay Flowers as well. Okay. Somebody that I truly like. That I guess I'm starting to like more and more. That they, coming out of Boston College, why did he spend 4 years in Boston College? And he came out and answered that question. It was he wanted the degree from Boston College because he had an opportunity to transfer to Alabama. And he decided, you know what? I don't want to go to Alabama. It's not about playing for the big school. It's about getting my degree, which I can respect that.
They are coaching him up.
But hey,
good answer though. It's a
great answer, but he did not come up with that because it's not true.
Maybe.
All right, so I am much higher on Josh Downs than I am Zay Flowers. I'm actually kind of perplexed by the whole Zay Flowers round one talk. I feel like that's just because there's two NFL teams that like Zay Flowers, and so they're talking about him in round one, and that's why he's getting the buzz. I think if you gave me Josh Downs and Zay Flowers and said you had to pick one, I'm taking Josh Downs. I just think he's a much more explosive player. So I'll put them both in the same grouping, though, because I think both of them can only thrive in the slot. I do not think Zay Flowers, I know he played some on the outside at Boston College. He's too small. He's 5'9", too. He's not a big guy. He's very slight of frame, and he's dealt with injuries as well in college. I do not think he's going to be able to thrive on the outside. Like, maybe he'll play some, but at the end of the day, I think he's going to end up being a slot wide receiver. So I guess I'll put them both because there's two spots that I looked at that I think both historically, or not historically, but over the past couple of years have used slot wide receivers a lot, and I think would thrive in those offenses. Number one is Buffalo. Buffalo and Josh Allen. Josh Allen has loved that slot wide receiver. In fact, they tried to bring Cole Beasley back out of retirement last year because they needed that. If they could get Josh Downs, I think he would take that offense to another level. He's so explosive. He's so smart as well. You watch those games with North Carolina when Drake May had to bail out of the pocket, much like Josh Allen has had to do. Josh Downs was able to just find that space in the defense and sit and and Drake May hit him. I think he could do the same thing for Josh Allen. The other one is solely based on the offensive coordinator / head coach, who had a ton of these slot wide receivers. Now, none of them as athletic as Zay Flowers or Josh Downs, but they thrived. They were massive in fantasy. You go back to, well, the only one I can remember now is Julian Edelman. Who was the other small white guy that just thrived there that I cannot? Edelman, he ended up going to Denver too, and I cannot for the life of me remember what his name is now. Wes Welker.
Welker, yeah. Went
Las
to Miami
Vegas.
first.
Yeah. The Las Vegas Raiders, they need a slot wide receiver. And I know Hunter Renfrow is there currently, but he's been beat up the past couple of years. Maybe he bounces back, and then that'll kind of be a redundant spot for them. But if Renfrow is not able to, I think that would be a great spot for either one of these guys, because we've seen McDaniels loves having that slot wide receiver. We'll see what they do at the quarterback position. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is not afraid to check it down to those guys either. I mean, we saw how phenomenal George Kittle was with him, and I don't think that they have that tight end there either. So maybe they replicate that with the Zay Flowers or Josh Downs.
So the biggest thing for me, right? I'm huge on ball tracking downfield, right? Like, people talk about Curtis Samuel's speed when he was coming out. I was like, Curtis Samuel can't track deep balls. And then they bring him into the Carolina offense, and they try to use him the first year. And I think the first 2 years as a deep ball receiver, and he's not able to track, right? Smaller guy overall, not tiny, not as small as Zay Flowers, but smaller guy. Zay Flowers is a dude who can track the deep ball, and he doesn't drop a lot of passes. He doesn't let a lot of things go. It's not like we're dealing with a Jalen Reagor type situation where, 10.1% drop rate in college, but he was great at tracking the deep ball, but he couldn't actually catch it. So, I think that he actually does have an opportunity, similar to like what we saw with Marquise Brown, to be that smaller receiver on the outside. I just don't see that happening with Josh Downs so often, because he has trouble beating press. And it's not like Zay Flowers, by the way. Sorry if you guys can hear the jet. Yeah,
you need to tell the dang airplanes to simmer down over there.
So it's not like Zay Flowers is a dominant presence over top, but I do think he can play the outside. And a few of the places that I have listed for him that I absolutely love, like I actually love New England for him. I hate saying that because of how poorly New England's offense operated last year, but there's an opportunity there to take over a role on the outside and be able to interchange with Juju Smith-Schuster, out of the slot. So I think there's opportunity at both spots. We also have to keep in mind that, dude, he put on a ton of weight, and he is compacted. He was hard to bring down in his final season in college, and now we're sitting there looking at him 15 pounds heavier than what he was in college. So, and it's not like it's, he just put on weight like water weight.
No.
We've seen him. He is stacked. He is stacked now. So just seeing him, I would like to see him an opportunity similar to like we saw Jahan Dotson, where it's like he'll be like, a lot of people thought Jahan Dotson would only be a slot receiver. And it turns out Jahan Dotson barely played the slot. They're right around, I think, the same weight. Zay Flowers is a little more compact. I think Jahan Dotson's like 2 inches taller, and Zay Flowers is a little more compact, but they have similar measurables in terms of their 40 times and whatnot. I just see like just this massive advantage for him to play a role as the wide receiver 2 in an offense that is efficient. And where that is, I haven't necessarily figured out as of right now. But once again, we brought up the Arizona Cardinals. I think that makes a lot of sense. Although he'd be pretty much the primary wide receiver. Well, no, because you'd have Marquise Brown there.
What about Indy? What about Indy there?
No, they have Alec Pierce, and I like Alec Pierce, and then they have Isaiah McKenzie to play out of the slot. And although Isaiah McKenzie is just a replacement level player, like they're not going to pass it enough in order for that to work out.
I mean, any wide receiver can work in KC, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's the other spot I had him in. Sorry, I didn't type it out. I was literally had to take my dog out because he was in the bathroom. I was like, I would love to see him in Kansas City. Kansas City would actually be my number 1 landing spot for him. We all talked about Sky Moore and how he's supposed to be, that dude. I don't know if he is, but a guy that can take over this offense is a guy like Zay Flowers, who can play the slot. He can play outside. It's debatable. We need to keep an eye on his footwork a little bit, but outside of that, he's good.
So the next guy I wanted to talk about was somebody that it's been kind of on the back burner. A lot of people haven't talked about. Garrett Price brought him up the other day, and I was like, shh, quiet. Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State. The biggest problem that I've seen with him is some of his catch, he drops. But I love his size. I love him as a wide receiver. Matt, what do you think about Xavier Hutchinson, and does he fit into the NFL? Is he that late second, early third, or is he somebody that's going to be a fourth-round pick again, like you talked about, is not going to work out in the NFL?
I think he's probably more of a day 3 guy. I don't think that he goes
round
day
6.
2. Yeah, I feel like he's a lot more like Cedric Tillman, but I don't even think he has the ability to create separation within route like Cedric Tillman does. Like Xavier Hutchinson, the only time he creates separation is at the catch point. He's a contested catch guy. Where I think like he reminds me a lot of and one of the landing spots I would actually put him at is Dallas. I feel like they could just use a guy like that. Them or Arizona. Arizona's the other one. I don't feel like they had, especially if they trade Hopkins, they just don't have that guy anymore. I mean, they got Hollywood Brown. They don't have that guy that can just go up and get it. But Hutchinson reminds me a lot of like Cedric Wilson out of Boise State and actually Michael Gallup, who is currently in Dallas. Like I feel like he could go in there and just replace Michael Gallup when they end up moving on from him. But he's not a guy that I think. I mean, he's like a best ball target because like maybe one year he ends up with like 4, 5, 6 touchdowns and wins you a couple weeks because of that. But I don't think he's ever a guy that you're going to be like plugging into your starting lineup.
Yeah, no, there's no way you could trust him. I mean, this dude is below average athleticism. Like he has no separation ability. Like, I mean, his agility, I guess, is okay to an extent. Like, yeah, he can jump, but like that's not really what makes a good receiver. Like that's not somebody I will have zero exposure to Xavier Hutchinson.
Because anytime
Joshua Palmer, anybody like that, I'd rather take.
Yeah, because the
biggest Trey Palmer, excuse me.
Biggest drop that he had was wide open in the end zone, and again, and he dropped it. So that's one of those ones. I love him as a player, but it's just one of those. The questions of the drops is just concerning for me.
But he's just not good enough on any level. Like he's not even a great jump ball receiver. He's okay. Like he's good, but he's not great. Like there's nothing that he'll be out of the league within 2 years or on a practice squad. He'll be a 6th-round pick and out of the league.
XFL.
Yeah, XFL
USFL.
for sure.
Okay, all right. So there's we got people that listen to us and they are XFL and USFL fantasy guys, so they can keep an eye on him. Quentin Johnston. I'm saving these last 2 guys. I wanted to save for the end because I love Quentin Johnston. Of course, I have him in a lot of my Debbie leagues because he was supposed to be wide receiver 1 this year. Looks like it's going to be the JSN or whatnot. But Quentin Johnston, Chase, tell me what you think about Quentin Johnston and where is Quentin Johnston in your rankings right now?
I think he's my wide receiver 3. So it's JSN, Flowers, Quentin Johnson.
Okay.
But I don't really love him. Like I really don't. Like he's such a project. And like he makes sense. Like he's literally like Corey Davis 2.0 at this point. It's just we're more aware of what guys like Corey Davis could offer in terms of like their abilities, what they're good at, and try to maximize his skills. But I don't have a place that I like want to see him at necessarily because it's more about the development of a jump ball-esque wide receiver, or what he should be. Sorry, he's not a jump ball wide receiver. He should be a jump ball wide receiver, but for some reason he doesn't possess that quality. Although he's made those plays from time to time. I don't have a place. Like I really don't. I just want to see him end up in a position where he has time to hone his craft and work as a wide receiver. This is great. Actually, if I meet what I was about to say, maybe like a team like the Vikings, the Giants don't want that. They want an interchangeable wide receiver. They'll keep Isaiah Hodgins, in that role to play the outside, but they want guys that can play the slot or outside. So the Giants won't be an option. The Vikings make some sense. you know, it's that one's tough for me. Do you have a different take, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I do like Johnston in theory, I guess is the way that I'll word it. He has definitely been very inconsistent, although I don't know all of that needs to be blamed on him. Obviously, you know, we talked earlier about Gary Patterson, what happened with Zach Evans. He did not run necessarily the best offense, in my opinion, to help the skill set of a guy like Quentin Johnston. And then last year, we really started to see him kind of come out of his shell in that Sonny Dykes offense. And then he got that sprained ankle that really kind of hurt him toward the back end of the season and kind of slowed his season down. In my opinion, although he is currently my wide receiver 3 as well, but I do think if he's able to put it all together, he will be the wide receiver 1 of this class. He just has a skill set that nobody else in this class has. He's got the size, he's got the speed, and if he can put it together, the hands, because I do think he struggles not just in contested catch situations, he also struggles with concentration drops. I mean, there's times he's wide open to run down the field and he drops the ball. You can't do that.
I hate that.
So, but if he's able to put all that together, we're talking about a guy who has a chance to be a truly special athlete. And so I think that is kind of thing for me. And I'm not comparing him to this player. I view him, though, coming out a lot like I view DK Metcalf coming out of Ole Miss. Now, he's not the athlete that DK Metcalf is, but if he goes to a team that is willing to accentuate his strengths like Seattle did, when DK Metcalf came out, Seattle's like, we know you're really only good with these 3 routes. That's all you're running in your first year, and we'll develop you as time goes. And he smashed. If a team is willing to do that with Quentin Johnston, get him on those slants, get him on those bubble screens, get him going deep on those go routes, he will thrive. Couple places that I would like for him to go. I really would like for him to go to Los Angeles because I feel like they don't have that weapon. They use Mike Williams as that deep threat. I don't think he has the speed that Quentin Johnston has, and both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams contracts are coming up soon. I would love for Johnston to be paired to a guy like Justin Herbert for his career. Outside of that, I actually kind of like the Giants spot just because I feel like they're also missing that, but I kind of agree with Chase. I don't know that they would take him. So for me, I do very much agree with Chase. Like, Quentin Johnston's that one, like, there isn't, in my opinion, a great landing spot for him, but hopefully when it happens, because I do think he's going round 1, when it happens tomorrow night, we're like, oh my God, that's great. That's a great landing spot. Or I don't think there's a medium spot, I guess, but I don't think there's a spot we go over and it's like, okay, I kind of like that. I think it's either he goes somewhere tomorrow night, we're like, that's awesome. Smash Quentin Johnston, or it's like, oh God, he's wide receiver 12 now. I don't really think
maybe the Saints
that far, but yeah, I mean, especially
maybe
if they use him like, I mean, I love Michael Thomas. They use him like they use Slant Boy and Michael Thomas because I think they can use Olave in different ways as well. Like the Saints would be a good spot for him as well. I actually do like that.
Yeah, the Saints are interesting. I mean, I'm just looking through the teams right now, and there's just nothing that's sexy. Like I'm like it's just like nothing. Like I wouldn't be stoked if he landed with anybody.
Well, real quick, just a yes or no answer. Does he go round 1?
I think so.
I think so too. I think he goes to the Saints in the back half. I think the Packers are interesting if they wanted to trade up and grab him at the end of round 1, but I don't think they would do that. But maybe they would. Like they're not going to take on a development or prospect for Jordan Love, in my opinion. But maybe if he fell to them in the second round with like that early second round pick, that would be kind of cool.
The only reason I think I shouldn't say zero doubt because everybody said there was zero doubt only one quarterback would go in the draft last year in the first round. He just has a skill set that none of the other wide receivers have.
Yeah.
And so I think that NFL GMs will look at that and be like, we love JSN, we love Zay Flowers, we love Josh Downs, we love Jordan Addison. None of those guys are the size speed freaks that Quentin Johnston is.
I agree with
some GFM, my goodness, GM will be like, I have to take him. I have to take him.
Tampa Bay makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if they decide to take him at 19.
Yeah. There's so many spots that like he could be good at, but it's just kind of like
it's how they develop him. He is such a we are all both on the same page with this one. Like that's
both
have brought up there. But...
You both have brought up Tampa Bay tonight a couple times, whether it's Will Levis, whether it's QJ. My issue as a Tampa fan is I don't know the new offensive coordinator that's coming in from Seattle. I don't know what his stamp is going to be. Is he going to be a developmental guy? I don't know that we have that in the building right now. And I guess we'll find out over the next year and a half, 2 years with these guys coming in. The next guy I had on the list is JSN. Do we really need to talk about JSN though? Because we've hit him a couple times, throughout the night. With everything else, I know, Matt. if it's JSN talk, you're all in. So
yeah, I mean, I think he's great. I mean, you don't have Brian Hartline, who I think is an amazing developer of wide receivers. You don't have Garrett Wilson, who we saw had the year that he just had, and Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison Jr. all come out and say like JSN's the best wide receiver they've ever played with. I think this kid's special. It was funny watching Dynasty Twitter somewhat melt down throughout the year because he was injured and he didn't play, and everybody was like, QJ's easily wide receiver one, Jordan Addison's easily wide receiver one. And then JSN comes back, runs his 40, and everybody's like, okay, I'm back in it. It was very much a what have you done for me lately? And the knock on him is obviously a lot of his production came in that bowl game in his sophomore season, where he was playing at times against a running back playing corner. But he also burned Clark Phillips III multiple times, the cornerback for Utah, who's likely also going in the first round this year. So, like, people were picking and choosing narratives against JSN. He is likely always going to be a slot wide receiver wherever he goes. I do think he can play outside, but I don't think he will thrive there. My thing with JSN is he can create separation in all three parts of the route. He can create it off the line, he can create it within route, and he can create it at the catch point. And I think there's very few wide receivers that can do that in the NFL. And as long as he lands with a quarterback that is willing to throw him the ball the minute he creates that separation, he's going to hit. I think he's going to be a smash wide receiver. He is the safest floor, in my opinion, as well in this class. Like, I don't know that he'll ever be consistently a wide receiver one, because I do think his upside is limited due to his physical limitations. But I think he will always be in that 12 to like 17 range. Like he's going to be in your starting lineup every single week. You're going to be perfectly happy that you have him on your team, but I don't think he ever finishes as like a top 3 guy.
So real quick, is he in a one quarterback? Is he your number 2 off the board behind Bijan Robinson? Single quarterback, fantasy.
If Gibbs goes round 1, no, I would take Gibbs over him. But I value running backs more than I do wide receivers in a single quarterback.
All right,
he wouldn't fall past 3.
Chase, question to you, and then go right ahead and tell me about JSN in your opinion if you want to.
Yeah. So he said, wait, are we talking about?
No, is in a one quarterback.
Oh yeah, he's my 102 now.
JSN number 2?
He's my 102, but I don't like him more than Gibbs. I just think that other people will value him more than Gibbs.
Okay.
So I'm taking him. But for example, I brought this up on Twitter earlier. If there's an opportunity to move down from JSN to Zay Flowers and acquire another 2024 first, I'm going to do that. Yep. So like I think if Zay Flowers going to like the 107, somebody's willing to trade me the 107 and a 2024 first for the 102, I'm taking that every time because I think that Zay Flowers will give you a similar output to JSN. Not the same. I don't think they're the same, but I think that there's possibilities that he'll give you the same output. But I like Gibbs more than both those guys personally, similar to what Matt said. Scariest place for JSN, by the way, has to be the Patriots. I don't know if that's true. I think that the Patriots love their wide receivers there for at least the rookie contracts, and I think that they hyper target some players, like we've seen with Jacoby Myers. And Jacoby Myers wasn't even good, and he still gave you fantasy outputs. I mean, he's fine, but he's not a great wide receiver. Imagine what they had if they actually had a great wide receiver. As for JSN landing spot, I hope that CJ Stroud still goes to the Texans. Then I hope that with the second pick, they take JSN. It makes a lot of sense to me. They have a decent offensive line. They have no offensive weapons. You're going to see CJ Stroud with comfortability, with JSN. We're going to see hyper targeted, and then JSN's ranking will be like top 12 wide receiver easily at the start of 2024, which is likely when I'll try to move him because the Texans will try to give CJ Stroud more talent around him, like a Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's where I take with that. Onto the tight ends.
Yeah, we're going to move on to the tight ends real quick, and I'm going to let you lead us off with what I think is the number 1 tight end in the class. Even though he had an injured back, he's been medically cleared. So I want you to tell me why Dalton Kincaid is number 1.
He's not for me, but you can fantasize.
This is fantasy. Come on, let me fantasize.
So there's a report that I'm putting out here very soon. It's from one of our guys over there at Fantasy Intervention. I was actually literally just working on his stuff today, and his name's Lucas. He talks about the value of positions and whether each positional value is a good investment or not. turns out that the only early tight end taken like the first round of rookie drafts for Dynasty, the only good value thus far has been Kyle Pitts. He's the only player that hasn't lost value from their rookie season, their sophomore season. Outside of that, every other rookie tight end over the past 4 years that's drafted the first, I think might even be 2 rounds, has lost value. So for me, I'm drooling at the mouth for Dalton Kincaid to land with like the Bengals, right, or the Cowboys, where you're going to see his value just rocket up and then push value back at the running back position. I can't wait for that. Michael Mayer is a guy that I actually hope lands in a poor spot because he will be in the league and he will be the starting tight end for a team 3, 4, 5 years from now, right? Like he will be there. We don't know that with Dalton Kincaid. So I'm hoping that Meyer ends up landing with a subpar team for the tight end position and Dalton Kincaid goes to a team like the Bengals personally. Now, sure, would that make him tight end 1? Sure, like if you value that, but I'm not taking a tight end early. So I'm hoping that he ends up landing in a better spot so that I can find Mayer at the end of a second round in drafts and get a guy that I know is going to be in the league because he's an all-around talent that stays healthy and was dominant at Notre Dame.
Yeah, so, I mean, I love Kincaid, and I think he was a little bit slept on because he's out in Utah. Michael Mayer was the number 1 going in because he's at Notre Dame. So, Matt, tell me, Michael Mayer at Notre Dame, why – I just don't see it. But, I mean, you watch college way more than I do, and I'm a huge college fan. But tell me why Michael Mayer is the number 1 in your mind.
He's just a complete tight end. And I think you need to have that. I know that the NFL is moving more toward a pass-friendly offense. So I get why people love Dalton Kincaid because they look at him and say, hey, he's going to go out there and he's going to be able to catch the ball and everything. But he is not the blocker that Michael Mayer is. And I think that helps Michael Mayer. He's going to be on the field for all 3 downs at all times. I mean, I know you mentioned he's not, he wasn't super impressed with what you saw out of him. And he's not the most athletically gifted guy. Dalton Kincaid tested better. Luke Musgrave tested better. I think a lot of these tight ends tested better. But what Michael Mayer has is consistency. He was able to do it against some of the better defenses. Well, I mean, he did it against they were at least a top 20 defense both years all 3 years that he played him in Clemson. And he dominated those guys. I mean, he ranks fairly favorably to me to guys like Austin Hooper, who I mentioned earlier. And again, if he ends up getting that kind of volume, I think he's going to thrive. But an underrated guy that I think athletically he tested very close to, and he reminds me a lot of, and I get different time than when this guy played, was Tony Gonzalez, who you could argue up until Gronk showed up was the greatest tight end of all time, and now Travis Kelce. So that's what he reminds me of. And I think he's going to be a guy that, because of how good he is as a blocker, is going to be out on the field. He's going to take 95 to 98% of the snaps, where Dalton Kincaid, when you need that extra blocker in there, he's coming off. He's not blocking. He's not staying on the field. And I'll also say this. I know the reports are that Dalton Kincaid's back is healthy. It worries me that it's his doctor calling people and saying that my back is healthy. It wasn't an NFL team that cleared him. It wasn't an NFL team that came out and said, hey, we cleared him for this medicals. No, it's his doctor calling everybody and saying, hey, my back's good. I mean, this injury helped him out most of the back end of this season. He could barely do anything. He had injuries last year as well. Like, he's only had the 1 year of production. He's a very fun player to watch, and I do like Dalton Kincaid, but he's not even like a top 3 tight end for me in this class. I just think he's been a little bit overrated.
Yeah, I do too. I like
that's
Gardner
fair.
Washington at value more than I like Kincaid.
Okay, I mean that's fair. That's, again, this is why I brought Matt on tonight, because I don't, listen, Chase has got a lot of good information, but I don't want to feel like I'm falling in the trap of just following Chase. I mean,
No, why wouldn't you? I'd win every dynasty league. What are you talking about?
That's okay. Fair, not fair. I don't know. We got the professor on tonight with Matt telling us how it's going. All right, so we talked about Kincaid. We talked about Mayer. You guys just brought up Darnell Washington. This guy is a highlight reel, much like Anthony Richardson, in my opinion, where it's just like it's super high ceiling, The difference is I think there's a super low floor for Washington when it comes to fantasy. But so let's start with you, Matt. Tell me what Darnell Washington, where is he in your rankings? Where do you want to see him in a landing spot? And then I'll let Chase just follow on to that.
All right, so he is currently my tight end 3, and I would listen to the argument on tight end 2. Just to give my rankings, it's Mayer, Musgrave, Washington for me. And I'm fine with those two kind of Musgrave and Washington being interchangeable. Washington is an intriguing player to me because he is so athletically gifted that I think that the team that drafts him is going to use him that way. At least I would hope. Again, I talked earlier with quarterbacks. I think you could apply this to a lot of positions. More players are ruined going into the NFL than developed. The thing with Washington is he is, again, what I like about Michael Mayer. He is a phenomenal blocker. He is a guy that if you don't think he's quite there yet when it comes to running routes, which I don't think he is, I think he needs to develop a little bit more running routes from the tight end position. But you could literally tell him to put his fingers in the dirt and block a defensive lineman, and he's going to do that for you, which is what I think gets him on the field. Where I think he will thrive early in his career, I think he's going to be a red zone beast. I think he's going to get down in that end zone, and there's nobody who can defend him because chances are they're going to line him up on the line, or they're going to put him up in the slot, and you're either going to get a safety on him who nobody's going to be big enough to keep up with him, or you're going to get a linebacker, and he's going to be too fast, and he's going to get away from him. So I think that's where he's really going to thrive early in his career, and as long as he starts to develop that route running, I think he's going to end up being, because he's so athletically gifted, a locked-in top 8 tight end for his career. And I really don't care where he goes, to be honest. As long as it's not Kansas City, because nobody's Travis Kelce. Outside of that, I don't care where he goes.
I mean, Travis Kelce's getting up there, man.
I know, but that dude's going to play for like 30 more years. Never missed a game, and he's just phenomenal.
65 and still getting at it. The one thing that's funny is. I know this is completely opposite, positioning, but when I look at Darnell Washington and when he moved that sled in that blocking drill, the first thing that came to mind was, remember in The Blind Side, Michael Orr, when he took that linebacker or defensive end and just kept driving him all the way back to the end zone. He said, where are you taking him to? He's taking him to the bus. It was time for him to go. But that's what Darnell Washington can do as a blocker. And he's still 6'6", 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", somewhere in that range. I mean, as an end zone, red zone threat, holy smokes. Chase, Darnell Washington, where you got him ranked and where's he going?
He's my tight end 3. I still have Dalton Kincaid above him, but it's not like out of pure ranking. That's more out of fantasy value. But it's kind of funny because we were on the show about 2 months ago, right? And we're talking. And I said my favorite investment is taking a tight end in the 3rd and 4th round of rookie drafts. And both you and Shane were laughing at me because you're like, what are you taking, Daniel Bellinger and stuff? And it was funny because 2 weeks after that, I get this article submission once again from Lucas, who we talked about earlier. The only tight end that was taken on average outside of the top 24 that lost value from his rookie season to his sophomore season in the past 4 years was Asiasi. Every other tight end actually increased value in terms of their ADP for that position, because all you need with tight ends is a little bit of belief, right? Like if you land behind a guy like, oh my God, Hunter Long's would have been a great example if he was still with the Dolphins. He ended up getting traded, but Hunter Long's value would have skyrocketed through the roof if he was a rookie going into the sophomore year and the Mike Gesicki left, and all of a sudden you're walking into a workload because tight ends are recycled at the NFL. And so for me, I don't want to touch tight end in the first 2 rounds. I really don't. Michael Mayer, if he ends up making me in the late 2nd, I'll take a shot on that. But I just don't need that to happen. I'm going to take shot after shot after shot on 3rd round, 4th round tight ends, free agent tight ends. Literally, if you look at my taxi squad, it's almost all tight ends because guess what? I'm going to end up flipping them for late 2nd in my dynasty leagues as soon as the season ends because people are optimistic, right? Like Daniel Bellinger, I got a 208 for Daniel Bellinger as soon as the season ended. We look at, because they thought that he would be the starting tight end for the Giants. They thought they were getting a steal. And then all of a sudden they acquire Darren Waller. It's not because I ever think that they're going to start. It's because they typically see a massive increase in volume because all of a sudden the tight end position, which is also very volatile. There's only 5 or 6 tight ends you actually want on your roster. So the optimism comes in for the tight ends that finish at tight end 25, tight end 20. The difference between tight end 8 and tight end 20 is practically nothing. Like they're the same players. So if you have a guy that's sitting at tight end 22 at the end of the season and he's a rookie and he ended up seeing like 2 good games, 3 good games, guess what? He's going to be worth a second round pick, which is essentially, what you're drafting half these starting tight ends, these tight ends that are selected in the first 2 rounds at. So at the end of the season, you dump all your tight ends and you start again, and you end up increasing the value because a 3rd round pick isn't worth nearly as much as a tight end that could see opportunity because people are optimistic.
All right.
Darnell Washington, I will have 100% exposure to.
I mean, I love it, and that's coming from a Gator. I don't like saying that about Bulldogs, but I mean, I love the guy's athleticism. So anyway, we got about 5-6 more minutes with Matt. So I do got a couple quick questions. The draft starts roughly 22 hours from now. Last chance before the draft starts, call your shot. Who is going to be the biggest slide in the first round, Matt?
Will Levis.
Love it. I love it. Yes. Chase, sorry about your guy. Who's
It's not my guy. I don't love him. I just think he's going to be a
guy.
Fantasy producer. I think he's going to produce some fantasy. And I like him. I do like him, but he's not my guy.
Who's going to be the guy that's going to slide for you, Chase?
Addison. Addison's going to fall out of the first round. Likely be probably around pick 210 to 220, somewhere in that range. I don't see any way that a team would want to invest an early capital on an average player.
Ooh, average. That's rough. That's not fair, is it?
He's average. Like, he's average athleticism. He did great at Penn State, and then once he transferred, he was average. Like, he's an average guy. There's nothing that stands out about him that makes him great.
He didn't go to Penn State. It was Pitt, but that's fine.
Oh, Pitt. I'm sorry, not Penn State. I apologize.
It's all good.
Pitt. My bad.
All right, so then I'm going to send these to you first, Chase. Who's going to be the team that's going to jump back into the first round to pick up somebody that is sliding?
Dude, I honestly, This is going to be a defensive player, and I don't have enough information for the needs of the early picks in terms of who trades up. But Green Bay makes a lot of sense if they don't end up trading up at that point, but they see a guy, they've done it. They've moved up every single year. They are a team that, like, literally, if I go through their trades, they moved up, let's see, they moved up last year, grabbed Christian Watson. They moved up the year before that. This is the 3rd round, but Amari Rodgers. They moved up in 2020 to grab Jordan Love. They moved up in 2019 to grab Darnell Savage. They moved up in 2018 to grab Orrin Burks, whoever the hell that is.
So you're saying Green Bay is going to be that team?
They move up every year. Like 2018, Jair Alexander, they moved up to grab a player. I could literally go through the entire list. 2016, Jason Springs in the 2nd round. Like, they are known for knowing what guys they want, and as soon as they get paranoid, they're moving up to grab their guy. They've traded back one time, and that was when the Saints wanted to grab Marcus Davenport, I think. And they gave him way over what the traditional value was for that position. They 100% are a team that will move up again this year to get a guy that they want. They are not a team that trades back.
Matt, who's going to be the team that's going to make the biggest move, whether it be move up, move out for the trade? So, like, we just saw, the Jets send what's going to end up being 2 first round picks for Aaron Rodgers. Who's going to be that team that's going to send multiple picks for one in this draft?
I'm gonna pair it with my first answer. If Will Levis really does fall, which I expect to happen, I think there's a shot that the Las Vegas Raiders jump up from their 2nd round pick into the back end of the 1st to then grab Will Levis and make him.
You think he's gonna fall that far? Oh my God!
I really do. I think he falls. I know there's a lot of talk about, like, out of the first 5 picks, like 3 or 4 being quarterbacks. I think we will only see Bryce Young and CJ Stroud go. I think Richardson goes somewhere in the 8 to 15 range.
Okay.
and then I think Levis falls. And I'm basing this solely on what the NFL showed us last year. I mean, all the talk was there was no way Malik Willis made it past Detroit at 2. And then if he did do that, though, there was no way he was falling past Carolina at 8. And if he did do that, there's no way he's falling behind Pittsburgh at 20. And then he did all of those and fell all the way to the 3rd round. I think that while I do think there is upside with Will Levis, I think he's more of a project than at least the latest reports of everybody gushing over him have said. I think he falls into the late 20s, and I think a team will jump up to take him, and I think that team is going to be the Raiders. They're not that far back. I think get the 7th pick in the 2nd round. Mm-hmm. Technically, it's really like the 6th pick because there's only the 31 picks in the 1st round because Miami lost theirs. So I think they just jump up to what I was trying to pull up the thing. So, I mean, you got the Chiefs, Eagles, Saints. I mean, that seems like the prime spot for Howie to just drop back, pick up that extra first-round pick again next year like he always does. He always finds a way to get that great trade. Raiders jump up to that 31 pick, and they get their quarterback and Will Levis so they can get that 5th-year option for him later on.
All right, so I want to end it on this. How many trades do we think happen tomorrow night in the 1st round? Just throw out a number. Dynasty Jacks asked this way earlier in the night, and I started because I didn't want to forget it. So, Matt, how many trades happen tomorrow?
5.
Chase.
Yeah, I was right around that range. I was thinking 6. 6 trades happen tomorrow, and I think there's a chance that a team. I don't remember who I had, but I think there's a chance that a team actually moves down twice.
Ooh, I like it. Well, Matt, thank you again for joining us tonight. Let our listeners and our viewers know what you got going on, where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I don't get to talk NFL draft a lot, so I enjoyed it. It's always college, and it's always college football, so I love getting a chance to talk about the NFL draft. You can find me at Sports Fanatic MB on Twitter, and all my stuff's over at Campus to Canton. If you have any interest in the college game, go check us out. Ton of free stuff over there. We'd love to help you guys out if you have any interest.
Yeah, and that is such a fun twist on the fantasy game, the Campus to Canton. And if you haven't checked that out, go check out their website. It explains everything on the website. Chase, what do you got going on, man? I know you're going partying tomorrow about, what, 8:45 or so, right?
I got shows, man. I got shows to do.
Yeah, but you're doing the first show, and then about 8:45, you'll be in the bars.
Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Matt, I got a question. Did you even have a drink tonight? All your shows completely sober?
I don't. Oh yeah, I don't. I rarely drink. I rarely drink. Yeah,
dude. So it's kind of crazy because as you brought up the chat, Jamie said need more long interventions like this show. Most of my shows used to go like 2.5 hours sometimes. I remember one time we did a show with Ray GQ when he was first on the scene. He had like 10,000 followers on Twitter. And we did the pre-draft show with him and went on for 3 hours and 15 minutes. And it's like every year the show gets stupid ridiculous. So we appreciate you for coming on and sticking here with us, man. It's great to hear the insight and to also get affirmation on a lot of my takes. Like, I get shit on constantly on the show by Shane and Jay. And it's like, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. You guys don't even know what you're talking about. So it's great to actually get agreements.
I can't agree with you on everything.
You never agree with me.
I will never.
I think that's the real reason Shane didn't come on, because he knew I was going to agree with Chase, and he just didn't want to hear it. So that's the real reason.
Well, it's funny, Matt. Like, we've been on a few shoshows together, and every time we've been on, it's like we're both in lockstep for the majority of our picks. I think our one disagreement was probably Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
Do we have another one?
I don't think so. Oh, Zach Evans.
Yeah, Zach. Yeah, I don't like it. Yeah. We had 2 players in disagree out of the 100 that we talked about. So.
Oh, and your boy.
Oh, Levis. Well, that's not my boy. That's not like I just love like if I'm picking a guy, I don't want to save myself to Jeff George. Okay, Jeff George is not a guy I ever want to attach myself to. Like
if I
like
say
a fucking
he's your
maniac,
boy,
but
and the first name that comes to your mind is his name, that's your boy.
No, that wasn't. It was just because you called him my boy 5 minutes ago, and I just had to argue with you about that. No, so. You guys can go check out all of my content over there at FF_intervention. As I talked about in the beginning of the show, a lot of our content, or the content I've been doing, hasn't appeared as of late, but I'm getting back up on the horse and getting back into the content side of things a little bit more heavy. I'm not working as long of hours over there at Trophy Smack, so I'm very excited about that. But yeah, go check me out over there at FF_intervention on Twitter, and make sure you guys subscribe to the damn YouTube channel. Like, why are you not subscribed already? Why are you listening to us and you're not subscribed? Go check it out.
It doesn't even make sense at this point. Oh man, for Chase, for Matt, I am Jay. Thank you yet again for letting us intervene with your fantasy life.